Hello, spooky friends, and welcome to another episode of the Scariest Podcast.
Woo! Did you forget the name of our podcast?
I was about to say story time because we just recorded the story time
This is
episode.
the third episode in 24 hours that we've recorded. I'm getting a little fucking loopy. I have a lot of editing to do after this too, so
I still
fun
have to
stuff.
pack. It's that we both
still have to pack. It's 10:30. No, yeah, it's 10 o'clock at night, so it's gonna get rough here. I'm totally gonna sleep on that plane. So
yeah, okay.
fun in the sun. What is this thing that we're about to do, Robin?
This is the Scariest Podcast. I'm Robin Grace. This is Adam Diaz.
Hello.
And we're here to tell you guys some interesting topics.
We hope.
And we hope. And we're going to start off with our homegrown horrors like we usually do. If this is your first time with us, homegrown horrors are
essentially like creepy, coincidental, paranormal, spiritual experiences that you've had or you've been told about, just a really good story that you do believe to be true, or like things that have happened to you that you thought was one of those things that turned out to be totally benign. Those are really funny stories that we get as well. And if you want to reach out to us with your particular story, you can email us at storytime@scarish.com. That is our email address. You can go to scarish.com. That is our website. And there's a contact us button at the very top. Click that and you can just fill out a form. It'll send it our way. And you can also find our email address there if you forget what it is. And you can find our P.O. box as well. And then we have all the social medias if you want to reach out to us those ways. Facebook is facebook.com/scarishpodcast. If you go there to message us, click like on the page. And if you haven't done so yet, but you are a listener, we recommend you go do that because it does help us out. You can also join our Scariest Spooky Friends group on Facebook from the Facebook page, which is really fun. You can post there for some instant feedback or just to see all the memes that we post all the day. They're really fun. All the day, all the livelong day. You can also join us on Discord, which is amazing. And the best way to do that, go to scarish.com, which is our website. Scroll down. On the right-hand side is the logo for all of our social media. Just click the Discord one. It'll take you right there. Twitter is at ScarishPod. I almost screwed it up.
I know, you're like out of breath.
Instagram is at ScarishPodcast. And then if you want to watch us record the Storytime episodes live, where we do nothing but homegrown horror, since we release episodes twice a week, we record those live. The time and date are going to change, but you can watch it at twitch.tv/ScarishPodcast or youtube.com/Scarish. Those are all the ways to reach out to us. I am out of breath, but I am going to go first this episode. So, let's do this thing. So this first email I have, subject is #AreYouAWitch? So
I'm not a witch.
It's just like that. I'm pretty sure that's what Departed's about. I'm not a witch. Are you a witch?
I'm not a witch.
You just decided you're not going to do it back?
No, now that we're going to New Jersey and like New York, I'm just like, I'm not a co-op. Like just saying it that.
They are close to Boston, so I guess that makes sense. Okay, but this email starts out, Hiya, Adam and Robin. Hello.
Hiya.
And then in parentheses, feel free to share if you like. So I guess we will. Sure, why not? And it goes on to say, so it's like a week later or so, and I am finally chill enough to write you guys about this. To begin at the beginning, my family's love for horror is born from my grandmother. Thursday, October 18th, I was sitting with my grandmother watching some B-list scary movie when her movements in the bed made the one lamp on her room flicker on and off.
That's creepy.
That is creepy. The lamp being plugged in behind her mattress.
Okay, so that's not so creepy.
No, it's plugged in and there's movement on the bed and it says her movement, so I'm imagining this is the grandmother moving on the mattress. Well, my daughter and I suck, so I began shouting, "The spirits are here. Speak to us, spirits."
Oh, no.
At which point my 3-year-old sitting on my lap began speaking gibberish and shaking her head back and forth like she was possessed.
Shut up. Don't ask that shit into your home.
Right?
No.
My mother and sister heard this in the other room and all the generations started to tell me and my daughter off. We laughed and didn't see the harm. Well, fast forward to the night. So this is all a fucking joke. They're just playing with each other, which is funny. Well, fast forward to the night of the 22nd. I have a horrible dream about taking my daughter apart and somehow putting her back together in working order. It creeped me out so bad that I was traumatized all day and afraid to sleep that night. Lo and behold, my mother and grandmother had a sleep study and were not home to hang with. It seemed like my sister and her husband were more dead than asleep in the next room. Plus, my husband kept trying to call from Florida, but the signal was only bad when he tried to call me or I him.
That's
So this is just a culmination of a lot of weird and lonely things happening after this. Figuring we might have angered some spirit while playing, there was this air of no one can save you hanging in the house. That's a fucking really creepy air. I decided to watch something scary to either help vent the energy or let me sleep, or make me so scared that I would stay up till daylight. I always recommend Disney movies when you're in that mood because it'll at least brighten your day a little bit.
Musicals are good.
Meanwhile, my poor baby tossed and turned in her sleep until I placed a large piece of rose quartz under her pillow. In parentheses, it was a gift from my mom, so I figured it carries double the maternal energies.
That's good.
That is cool.
That's the only way Harry Potter survived.
I hate you so much.
What?
It was love, Harry. So I ended up settling on a show called Lore, which we've totally heard of. Robin's watched Amazon, it and listened to it. And in its first season, episode 3, it talks about Michael Cleary, or more interestingly, the tragic end of his wife.
Yeah, it's do you know that one? Where he killed, I think you covered it on the show.
It sounds super familiar. Remind me, though.
Where he killed his wife because he thought his wife was a changeling.
Oh, yeah, I totally did cover that. That's right. Then the internet started to crap out on me, so I shut off the TV and turned to you guys. Most recent at that point for me was episode 45, where you guys talked about changelings and proceeded to tell the same story. I felt like the room dropped about 15 degrees and ended up covering the whole room in salt. Might not be very scary, but I'm sure it could exactly be a coincidence.
What are the odds?
That's super fucking creepy. I mean, better safe than sorry, but there's a lot of salt on your floor now. I woke up the next afternoon at some point. I went to sleep, but I do not really remember. P.S. In the Cleary family story, I noticed you guys were unsure as to why they used urine in the ritual. Simply put, some herbs don't distill into water, so other liquids are used from time to time. Monks often used it in monk's hood.
It's a herb.
Oh, okay. Monk's hood, often used in the banishing of fairy folk, is one such herb. Usually alcohol is the liquid of choice, but urine is thought to have purifying effects by some cultures. I leave room to be incorrect. What's really funny is I'm about to talk about urine in my story too, so
you're in a whole boat of trouble.
I hate you so much. So yeah, it's weird how these things overlap, and this time it was with piss. Wow. Lots of love to you guys, and keep on creeping on, Brittany.
Thank you so much, Brittany. That's hilarious.
That. It is funny, and it's funny that you can admit, like, it probably was nothing, but it really creeped me the fuck out. Temperature drops just freak me out.
Yeah.
And like at the same time, I'm like, fuck, it is cold in here, but I hate it when it's warm. So ghosts, thank you. I appreciate that.
Don't.
What? I'm just saying, like, we've talked about that in the summer. Just have your house be possessed to keep your cooling bill low.
No, I'm good. All right. So I'm going to go right into mine. And this one goes, hey guys, I wanted to share something I experienced a little while ago.
Cool.
Feel free to share it on the show. This was during my junior year of college, and at the time, I'd usually spend the weekends at my then-boyfriend's house. I always got a bad feeling from the back 2 rooms of the house, especially the master bedroom. I never felt comfortable staying in that room because I felt like I was being watched. I noticed that my boyfriend at the time never slept in there, but we'd sleep in the smaller guest room. I asked him about it, and he said that he'd also get a bad feeling at night, like something was pacing in the room and watching him.
That is super fucking creepy.
Right?
It's not just having a ghost, it's having a very anxious, nervous ghost in the room with you.
I have enough anxiety already, thank you. He described a shadow creature he saw peek around the corner to look at him. No thanks.
It's funny, too, because when I think of that, it's just like the picture in my head is either something super terrifying or just super cute and curious. Like, hey, what's going on in there, y'all? And it's like,
do you think you see Sableye, the Pokemon?
Sableye is kind of creepy to
that
me,
purple
actually.
one with the red eyes?
Yeah, it's the one that shows up on our Twitch whenever someone donates us bits. So I'm very familiar with Sableye. Yeah. You clearly don't pay attention to our alerts when we get them.
Shut up.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Whoa. Okay.
And Haunter is there when people subscribe to us, I think, from specific places.
So he said the creature must have been 8 feet tall, so definitely not a Sableye.
Holy shit.
He also said that whenever he felt this presence at night, that the light bulb in the bathroom would be slightly unscrewed in the morning. So it's like, let me make this impossible for you to turn the light on.
I fucking can't stand it. The other day, I had to pinch myself because I was walking upstairs and, like, the hallway light wouldn't turn on. And what's really weird about our hallway light is there's a switch for it next to every door. So there's a switch downstairs to come up the stairs for it. And then there's a switch. That's not true. Let me rephrase that. There's a switch outside our bedroom, and it's between us and the office. There's a switch next to the bathroom, between the bathroom and the guest room. And there's a switch for it at the end of the hall by my mom's room. There's 3 switches for the same light, and none of them would work. And I was like, why the fuck aren't these lights turning on if there's more electrical problems? But I pinched myself because I'm like, this is the first step into having a nightmare in all my dreams, and everything feels so real. I'm going to freak the fuck out if this is a dream.
Oh, my God.
It was scary, and I just went over and I flipped one. I flipped them all, and then I asked my mom, like, is there something wrong with the lights? And she was like, no. And then I flipped it, and it fucking worked.
Wow.
And I was just like, oh, and one of the switches must have been halfway, and when I flipped it, it moved from the halfway position to the off position, or demons. It's really hard to tell.
Okay. Not enough that it would fall out, but enough that he'd have to tighten it for it to work. Yeah, it was totally being like, you can't turn this on. He lived alone and didn't have any friends that had access to the house when he wasn't there, so it wasn't someone messing with us. The weird feeling continued for months, and occasionally we'd have the bulbs come unscrewed or see something in passing, but it was mostly normal. For context, he was in the military and was leaving for a few months when this incident happened, but it was the night before he left and we were sleeping in the guest room. I felt a weird tug and tingling sensation, kind of like when your foot falls asleep, on my ankle. So I wake up and see a black mass in the corner of the room. I didn't feel like it was going to hurt me, but I definitely didn't want it there. I woke him up, but by the time that I woke him up, he was gone. He swore that whatever it was never hurt anyone before, but was curious and probably just watching us. Oh, imagine like doing stuff and like having this thing like, oh, I'm just curious, guys.
Yeah, what's that shadow in the corner beating off? That's really creepy.
Gross. And of course, the next morning, the bathroom light bulb was unscrewed. No. So the next day, he left for a few months. That must have been so scary. You're like,
staying in this
don't
place?
leave.
Yeah, dude. Fuck that.
Since the assignment was short notice, he didn't have time to pack up the place. A few weeks later, I went back with my dad to help pack some stuff up. Okay, so she didn't stay there.
Yeah, she's not staying there. It's just vacated at this point.
So I got a terrible feeling as soon as I entered. I was suddenly terrified and weak in the knees. I've been in that house alone before and was a little nervous then, but this was different. I felt like I was going to be sick again, and I felt a strange, negative presence coming from the back room. I felt like I was being compelled to look down the hall, but I knew that I didn't want to because I felt like I'd see something I probably wouldn't want to see.
Yeah, that's a hard feeling to get and then to not have the curiosity get the better of you. Like, well, I might as well look. I'm already feeling this way.
Darkness falls. You don't want to look at it.
Yeah, that's true. The evil tooth fairy.
Yeah. My dad stayed with me in the house while I finished up and then went to start the car as I was locking up. I took a look at the house while we pulled away and thought I saw a figure in the window of the master bedroom, but told myself that I was making things up. Once we started driving away, he mentioned the terrible feeling that he had in the house. He felt the exact same thing that I did. He even said that he saw a figure in the window.
Wow, that's fucking crazy.
I've never mentioned anything about the figure or house being haunted, so that's how I knew I wasn't just making something up. We both agreed the source of this negative energy was the back room. My father is pretty skeptical, so he wouldn't say something like this if he didn't truly think something strange was happening in that house. I've never been back since, but I still get creeped out thinking about it. I hope you guys enjoyed. Thanks for making a great podcast and keeping me entertained and laughing while I work.
You're welcome. And
that was from Bridget.
Oh, thank you, Bridget. And thank you so much for sending us that story. That's a really fucking good story.
Yeah, that's a really good story. I have chills.
Honestly, like my aunt, I've mentioned it so many times before. My aunt was a realtor for Northwest Indiana, Chicagoland area, and she used to say that she used to take people to see so many houses, and regardless of like their backgrounds or religious beliefs or whatever you could think of that would separate people from other people, some people would walk up to the exact same houses and they wouldn't even go inside. They'd be like, there's something wrong here. Or like, I'm getting a really weird energy, or like something doesn't feel right here. And they would turn the fuck around and get in the car.
That's
and
crazy.
like, it could have been the perfect house for them, and they wouldn't even step foot inside. So that is a legit thing that happens to people.
Yeah.
And imagine having to go inside. It's not like, no, I don't want to buy this house. It's like, hey, all your shit's in there. You're going to have to go in.
Yeah.
And seeing shadow figures and having to go back in afterwards. It's just super, super creepy.
Yeah.
So that was a really good one.
Yeah.
Well done. So that's the homegrown horror section for this episode, and we're going to move into the topics.
So what is your topic?
So this week I decided that I was going to go with something a little bit different than I've normally done. I actually got really excited about it, and I'm going to be covering superstitions. So Robin, what's your topic this week?
For last week, I was going to do the Black Death or the Black Plague, and then while I was doing my research, I was like, okay, maybe I want to do my easier topic first. So I chose to do Annabelle instead, which you guys have heard.
Shifted over and did my disease last week.
And so now I'm going to do the Black Death or Black Plague.
It's a really good thing that I did the Spanish flu last week, because the same day that our episode came out on Tuesday, there's another podcast called Things You Should Know or something like that.
Yeah.
My friend Garrett listens to it. He also listened to our podcast. So I woke up to a text of him having screenshot his phone with that podcast that released the same exact day, which was about the Spanish flu.
That's so crazy.
And checked their episode description, and they said that it was like 10 to 50 million people that had died. I was like, like 2017 new research states 50 to 100 million. So I'm really glad I got that detail right. And it was funny because I was writing my script. I'm like, I don't need to include the names of all these doctors that were arguing and pointing fingers at each other over the last century over whose fault it was. It's like, who cares about those details? And I guarantee that they covered those names exactly.
Yeah.
And I'm like, some dude, some bro, some dingleberry. So yeah, oops. But I don't want to listen to their episode because I'm going to hate myself for not doing better on ours.
Okay, so the thing about, I feel like, is we aren't historians and we are not scientists, and we always say that. We're just here to
tell a good story.
To tell a good story.
But try and make it as factual as possible.
Right. But it's just like, we're not there to be like, we've researched and read a million books
I
and
don't want mine to be, I get really wrapped up in details, and I don't want to be too dry or too sciencey. And one thing that I get a huge nerd boner for is numbers. Is you and numbers. I really like numbers that show you the scale of something. I didn't really get freaked out about Spanish flu until I started getting into the scale of what had happened and realizing it was unfathomable to me. And that's why I put in stuff like you're in a stadium with 50,000 people, and to give you an idea of how big of a number.
I've never been in a full stadium either.
It's to give anyone the idea of how big of a number this is, or how big of a difference a million is from a billion, because it's just substantial. And then to be now this is how many people died. I think that's something that is kind of my strong suit. I don't know. People could absolutely fucking hate it, and they hate listening to those parts of the episodes. But I don't know. That's something that I like to do. But yeah, so this week, I'm not covering a disease. You're covering a disease. I'm covering superstition.
You are a disease.
I hate you. You are superstition. But I knew this week Robin was going to be... I'm a haunted
house. Because baby, you're a haunted house.
Much. I knew this week that Robin would be tackling a deadly disease, and I wanted to tackle something slightly different like I had said. And honestly, the thought of this occurred to me the day after we recorded the last episode, which is also known as today, because we're recording these back to back. And it's what's funny is when you think of weird and bizarre behavior people exhibit, I don't know why I was thinking of this today, but sometimes it all ties into one specific thing. And most of us shockingly can relate to it depending on what is stated as the reason for that bizarre behavior. And some of us absolutely cannot. And I've met both types of people. And I happen to be, despite being a skeptic on most things, in the camp of people who 100% relate to this bizarre behavior if it has the one word attached to it, which is, without further buildup, superstitions. So... Okay. Before I begin, this should probably, just to be safe, be called Superstitions number 1.
All right.
Because,
Step on a crack, break your mother's back.
Yeah, let's be real here. There's so many. There are far too many superstitions to cover in one episode. And, I'm going to get in-depth on one particular one. I'm going to hit up some other ones that I've never even heard of.
Wow.
I'm going to talk about some personal experiences I have with superstition, so you guys can all make fun of me, I'm sure, or just support me and say, hey, I've had that too. I will talk about some of those, but, I know that I'm going to bring up some stuff that you might have experienced or you might have done personally, or it might remind you of something that you do that maybe no one else does. And that said, when we get to those points, I want you guys on your social media, your Facebook, your Twitters, you know where we're at. Let us know whether or not you've had that happen to you, or you do those same things, or you have a really rare one that no one knows about, or something personal that people think you're crazy for.
Yeah, so, if I know a lot of families have their own superstitions.
Exactly. So let us know what they are, and I want you to use the hashtag superstish-ish. And I know you're probably thinking...
How do you even spell
I know you're probably thinking right now, how the fuck do you spell that? It's really easy. Supers, tit, ish. That's it. Supers, tit, ish. Hashtag supers, tit, ish. Superstitious. So I'm going to talk about some superstitions, and I really want to talk about some superstitions, whether they're cultural or they're personal, that are quote unquote reinforced. Because when we look up superstitious type of things, they always talk about whether or not they are or are not reinforced based off of how much they're prevalent in society. And I really do want to hear about yours, because most people have little rituals or routines or traditions, and you'll think of some of those things, or some things that you've seen other people do, or even celebrities that have done stuff, or athletes, because they have tons of them. And to give you an idea of what I'm talking about in particular, this is a very good example, and this is a personal one. So sometime early last year, Robin asked if she could paint one of my toes. And I was just laying there, and she was going through some of her colors of her nail polish, and she was like, okay, I want to see what this color looks like. And she was like, can I paint one of your toes? And I thought, she probably thought I'd say no, but I was like, sure, I don't care. That's no big deal. And I don't remember what color I got, but I do remember...
It was a dark blue.
It might have been blue. It might have been green.
I think it was sparkly too.
So what I do remember is that like I didn't like remember that I had it. And then I wore flip-flops to go see Infinity War for the second time. And I was walking around Sunset Casino in Las Vegas with a painted toe just hanging out there, which doesn't bother me at all. What did bother me actually was that like I walked my painted toe to whatever that burger place was right outside of the theater. We went over there and ate there for the first time. And then I got violently ill for 3 days.
Yeah.
Pretty sure I got the Spanish flu. So
shut the fuck up.
Anyways, tying this together, right after football season started, right after the Bears played their first game, which they lost, she had occasionally repainted my toe. And I was like, oh, this is a cute thing. So I was like, hey, can you give me a new color? And she's like, sure. What do you want? And I was like, I want orange because it's one of the Bears colors. And I thought like, it'll be cool to have a Bears toe and maybe it'll support them. And they were 0-1 and they haven't been good for fucking like 6 seasons. They've been last in their division and they did well. And even though as a rational man, I know that my right foot big toe being orange has no effect whatsoever. Like, I'm not like a chaostician or whatever the hell Jeff Goldblum called himself in Jurassic Park. You know what I mean? Like, small little details can affect the bigger scale of things. Like, having little details affect bigger things, like butterflies causing rain instead of sunshine across the world, so forth. Whatever that speech is that he gives in Jurassic Park.
Okay.
So, I'd make sure my toe got a fresh coat of paint every week. And the weeks where I didn't do that, where I didn't paint it and it was just like old nail polish, the team would not play that well. And the weeks where it looked bad, because maybe I hadn't maintained it in a couple of weeks, no joke, the team lost. Regardless of who they were playing against, they could have played against a shitty team, and all of a sudden the Bears would lose. So to me, it was like, I need to do this. And the weeks that I had my toe freshly painted, they fucking kicked the shit out of the other team, regardless of who they were. She painted my toe the night before they played the LA Rams, who were like 11-1 at the time, which is an amazing record. And the Bears beat their ass. It was insane. I was like, it's all the toe. It has to be. And that's the thing, though. Like, superstitions fade or shift. And to those of you who, like, watch our live shows, they know I started up a beard, like, right at the end of October. You can even check the episodes. And I shaved it down to a goatee around December. But during the time I had my facial hair, because for whatever reason I thought it was good luck, the Bears went 9-1. They played 10 games. They won 9 of them.
And then you shaved it, and then they lost.
And then the only fluke was against the New York Giants. So it's not a 100% thing. I'm not saying that I'm 100% sure that my beard affected them. But I really did feel like the facial hair gave them some sort of powers.
Okay.
And at the beginning of this new year, I shaved off my goatee. And I mean, I had my toe painted going into the playoff game. I had my Bears pajama bottoms. I had a Bears shirt. I had my Bears jersey over the top of it. Our dog had her Bears jersey on. And they lost. They just lost this past week. It was very brutal for me to watch. And I'm like healed enough now to talk about it. But yes, I did shave off my goatee. I went fresh cut. And I remember taking it off and being like, maybe this was the good luck charm. And like realistically, like I'm smart enough to acknowledge that this all sounds stupid. But sometimes when you do some stupid, seemingly innocuous thing, and then you get a result that's not attached to it whatsoever, you think, what does it hurt if I repeat that activity? And that's kind of where superstitions, especially on a small scale, come from. So that's one for me personally. And I'm sure some of you people out there have had this happen or have like inadvertently done something and been like, I know there's no correlation there, but it just felt like there was a correlation there. So a really good example of something like on a large scale that people have done for a very long time and continue to do that most people have heard of is to say and perform a knock on wood. So the idea is if you're talking, and this is what I've always thought it is, if you're talking about some trend happening in your life, you knock on wood for good luck, like to keep it going. Or if you're talking about something bad that has happened, you knock on wood to ward it away from happening again. So to me, knocking on wood has always been like the let's keep it going for like whatever has happened. Like if things are going good, keep them going good. If things happen bad before but haven't happened in a long time, keep it from happening. So like you're kind of just announcing to the universe like I want good things to happen. And I do it all the time. Like if I'm doing it in the car and there's no wood around, like I'll say knock on wood as a joke and like knock on my crotch. I do it all the time. It's 100% true. And although not everyone does it, most people have at least heard of it. And I've mentioned it before on the show, but most people don't really know where it came from. And it's different depending on where you're from. And what's really funny is there's a lot of people who are skeptical who say like this is actually an old kids game that had to do with like poking sticks and shit like that. And there's no origin about it before the 19th century, which would have been the 1800s, which is still 200 years.
It's like the Cubs. Why they hadn't won for so long.
And that's a curse. I mean, that's like the opposite of a
But
superstition.
it's like you're superstitious, and that's why like it happened.
I shouldn't say it's the opposite. They tie in hand. But there's all those things that you don't want to do to avoid like bringing the curse up.
Or like when that guy took the hat to the Pope or to the Vatican and asked them to give it to the Pope or whatever.
Yeah,
right?
and then all of a sudden they got really good and they wound up winning the World Series the next year.
Yeah, superstitions are kind of cray-cray.
They are kind of crazy, but it's like it's really fun to examine them from a perspective of like, where the hell did this come from? So some people say that its origin wasn't before the 19th century and it was a kid's game. And the funny thing is that there's historical record of this happening way earlier than that, so those people really legitimately are wrong. And most superstitions that have been around this long are based off of tradition, and no one really knows why they do it. They just know the circumstances that surround that particular act. And even though you may not know where it come from, you can find out what someone else's superstition derived from. So here's one of the versions that I've heard from German folklore. I researched this at in Purdue University my senior year, and I wrote a short story on it because I thought it was so fascinating. So it was believed that, and they still believe this for like, some people, that trees hold spirits and fairies and other types of creatures within them, like dryads and any other fairy, or I should say any other forest land creature that you can imagine, and they dwell in the forest and they live in the trees. And it was also believed that there was a spirit of the forest itself. For each forest there was a general spirit that basically maintained or protected the forest and the things inside it, and that it was consistently asleep unless called forth for protection. And in the version that I've studied, and honestly it's the version that I like the best because I've seen variations, there's evil spirits that like to tromp through the forest and some like to hunt. And in particular, there's one that people were afraid of, and it was essentially a giant serpent. And what I really like about this one is that, like, you hear giant serpent, and it certainly has some, like, biblical undertones, but, like, snakes are very often associated with evil regardless of Christianity.
I hear they like to be on planes.
I hate you so much. Side note, there's a Native American site in Peebles, Ohio called Serpent's Mound. I know because I've been there.
What?
We got to write a book report my senior year of ancient and medieval history, and the category was like the new wonders of the world, and there was all these new things that people considered like wonders of the world.
Yeah.
One of them was Serpent's Mound in Peebles, Ohio.
Why
we were
is it a
only
wonder?
we were only 5 hours away, so we drove there. It's a giant site. Just imagine like someone's backyard if they had a huge backyard.
Does it look snaky?
It's a giant snake mound. Like literally like someone's like, let's make a mound of dirt in the shape of a giant snake that's about 10 feet high and winds for about 100 to 200 yards. It's enormous. And they built this thing and they covered it with grass, and the grass grows. It looks like just giant hills. But from overhead, it's a giant serpent swallowing an egg. Now they say that the egg is supposed to represent either the sun or the earth, but this depiction is supposed to be basically the end of time.
Wow.
This is when this giant serpent swallows either the sun or the world, and it's the end of the world. And it's like serpents are always kind of associated with evil, regardless of the background, because this was Native Americans before Christianity had showed up.
Yeah.
And it's just very interesting to me that in this story, like, the thing that people are most afraid of in the forest is this giant serpent.
I think it's funny that just last night we got to the episode of Supernatural where Metatron is like, you let the serpent in to the
Exactly.
garden and
Like,
stuff.
it just always comes up, and it's super cool. And, like, you could do a background. We could do a scarish topic on, like, the serpent representing evil or something like that. But I'm going to get back to knock on wood, okay? So people who would enter the forest would have strange encounters. Some would be attacked by bizarre creatures. Some would claim that they were attacked by a giant snake.
Some people's horses would get drowned in mud.
I hate you so much. She's talking about the Neverending Story, which is from like a week ago when we talked about it on the live show. For us, it's like an hour ago. And some people would go in the forest and just simply not come back. So, I mean, that's going to happen. You're going to have people that are going to disappear in like wilderness because they're not like sure what they're doing or they have an accident, you know? But it felt very much like there was something evil in the forest when people would go into it. So people began to look for a way to beseech the spirit of the forest for protection when entering the woods. And to do that, before stepping foot into the forest, you would approach the first tree you could get to, basically at the tree line, and you'd reach your hand out and you'd wrap your knuckles on the bark of the tree to make a loud noise and a very specific attempt to awaken the spirit of the forest. And that's supposedly where knock on wood came from. To ward off something
Interesting.
bad, to awaken something good. And is that the definitive answer of where it came from? Probably not. But it's a great story that I've heard and I really like, and it might not be the first one that's come up, But the superstition is different all over the world, and people know about this all over the world. Like in Italy, the idea of knocking on wood, it's the most different in Italy. Because if you speak of something that you want to avoid tempting fate because of, you don't knock on wood, you touch iron. Which is funny that you bring up supernatural, because they always tell you like salt, iron, like those are the things that you can fight off supernatural stuff with. And it's just so interesting to me that Italy has something that's similar to it, but not exactly the same, because people basically do it when seeing something related to death. Like they even said, like if you see like an undertaker, you're supposed to touch iron. And that's a living person with a vocation that you just think is creepy. Yeah. And I just think that's super interesting. In Egypt, they call it holding the wood. Hold the wood. As a side note, that's hot. And it's basically done to keep a good thing going or have something good from the past return. And it's also done, and I really like this part of the superstition in Egypt, it's done in hopes that it will prevent envy in others. Oh. So you're like wishing good fortune for yourself and wishing like people also will enjoy it and not be envious of it. That's cool. I think that's super cool. If you're from Bulgaria, you probably knock on wood to ward off evil. In Bulgaria, it's not done to like attract good luck or like prolong a good luck streak or anything like that. It's straight up warding off evil if you feel an evil presence or if you feel something dark or if you're talking about something dark. In Brazil, you have to knock 3 times on wood specifically after speaking of something bad happening. And all around the world, this is a superstition that people still fulfill. Like sometimes out of habit. Like people don't actually believe it. Like I'm not super positive that if I'm talking about something I don't want to happen, and if I don't knock on wood, it's 100% guaranteed to happen. It's just a habit, you know? But things like knock on wood make sense that they've kept going, because if you do this and something bad doesn't happen, why not just do it again? You know what I mean? It's like the reason I keep doing it is because like if I talk about something and I knock on wood and something bad doesn't happen, that doesn't mean it worked. Like that, I'm not saying like, oh, that means that this rock means that it'll keep tigers away, because there's no tigers here right now. It's like, but at the same time, it's like, why not just keep doing that? But when things happen that reinforces a belief in a superstition versus like things just the absence of something reinforcing it, that's when it gets kind of creepy. And here's 2 good personal examples that I have. And these are kind of stories to help you understand, like, if you're not a superstitious person and you're around people who are superstitious, the best way you can deal with it, or if you are the superstitious person, the kind of people to avoid. Because
so many S's.
I know, it's getting very difficult on my mouth and my tongue. But I've mentioned before that...
I'm just like, are you sure you're not talking about the wood?
Yes, I'm sure. I've mentioned before, I am a fan of the Chicago Bears football club team. Okay. And a lot of my superstitions have to do with sports, because that's just where most of the things crop up.
I just think of like, don't step under a ladder, don't break a mirror.
Exactly.
Like...
I think those are the most common ones, and I kind of tried to avoid them, because if I want to do this again, I want to dig deep into where those came from, especially like 7 years in particular with the mirror.
Oh, cool.
But the last time the Bears did very well in a season, they made it to the NFC Championship game. They played the Green Bay Packers. And I did what I always do for very high-pressure, important games for teams I really like, because I'm very passionate. I act like a big baby if they lose.
Scream at them.
I watched it with a very low number of people, because I do that on purpose. I don't go to bars. I don't go to big, like, NFC Championship parties or Super Bowl parties or World Series parties. Yeah, he was literally
like, if your sister's coming over, I'm going to a different room.
Yeah, because, like, well, that's the thing. Like, her sister will come over and she'll ask questions about just, like, general football. Like, how many downs do they get? Like, how far do they get to go? Because she has an idea. She's not into sports and she wants confirmation. And it's like, I don't mind answering those questions during normal games. But during these games where I'm, like, super fucking focused and really, really hoping that my team wins, I really don't want to explain the basics of the game. So I was like, if she comes over, I'll just watch it in a different room. Basically, like, I'm going to isolate myself so I can watch it alone. I can have my emotions. I don't have to feel judged. I can just go through the whole thing and be okay afterwards. And honestly, like, looking at memes making fun of the Bears after they lost really helped. But they were so funny. But
I can't.
In particular, this game, which I think was like 2010.
You know, somebody edited that Wikipedia page for Cody Parkey the next day back to the normal stuff.
People are just so funny with the Wikipedia edits they do. But anyways, so I decided I was going to avoid all those people and all these people that pretend like they're fans of the teams. They can go out drinking and be like, oh my God, we're so good this year. And you're like, name a person on the team. They're like, fuck you. Why are you such a dick? They're the same people who are like, when your team is bad, they're like, that team sucks. Why are you rooting for them? I root for Seattle. I mean, Carolina. I don't know who's doing well this year. That's who I'm a fan of. Like, if you're
bandwagon fans.
Exactly. If you're a fan of anything and you're a consistent fan of them, seeing someone like jump on the bandwagon and then jump off, you just hate those people. And you especially don't want to be around them when they're doing well. You also don't want to be around people who are rooting for the other team that are just there to antagonize you, which exists in droves, especially where I'm from. Certain places had to either declare themselves like this is a Bears bar or a Packers bar.
Wow.
Because they're basically telling people like, if you root for the other team, don't fucking come. And that's how Vegas is. Like, if you look at the newspapers, they'll tell you the list of the bars and the restaurants and which teams they represent, so you know to go to them, because they will tell you to leave if you're wearing the wrong jersey.
Wow.
Because places that try and be, like, neutral, that let everyone in, like, they have fist fights.
Wow.
They have giant fights. Like, I walked into some place, it wasn't even the season. Like, it was the off season, wearing a Bears jersey. They wouldn't even seat us. They told me, take it off or get the fuck out.
What?
And I was
Where
like, why?
This?
It was back home. And I was like, why? And they're like, because every time someone comes in here with a jersey, they get into a fight. And I was like, it's like April, dude. It's not even the draft. Like, are you kidding me? They're like, that's the rules. Like, you got to get out. I was like, okay, cool. Literally never went back there. The place closed down within a year. Because everyone that wanted to root for a sports team went to, like, the designated place, and they avoided that place. And it's crazy because this is, like, this tension, and it just grows the higher the stakes get for these championship games. And you can say, like, it's just a game. If you ever want to piss off someone who's really into sports, just tell them it's just a game at a very tense moment. Because it's just like, you know what? Fuck you, man. It's a game that I really enjoy.
This is why we're not friends anymore.
And I'm really rooting for a specific outcome. So I isolate myself from this shit. I don't want to deal with it. And my friend who was hosting invited another one of our friends over. So it was like 6 people max. And I didn't have any particular superstition attached to that season. Like, there's no goatee, there was no toe painted, there was nothing. It was just like, I want to enjoy football, watch a good game with a team I really love. But it's generally, and I think this means like generally for everything, it's a generally held superstition across the board that you don't speak something bad out loud and reference like specifically, man, wouldn't it suck if this happened?
No one says
No one does that shit. Like, regardless of whether or not it's sports, but especially in sports. Like, in baseball, if someone's pitching a no-hitter or a perfect game, which, for those of you who don't know, no-hitter means no one's gotten a hit. Perfect game means no one's been on base. So you haven't given up a hit and you haven't walked anyone, which are much, much harder to do. And if you're a pitcher and you're doing that, you just act like it's a normal game to avoid the pressure because you know you're doing something very rare and extraordinarily difficult. And you try and act natural, and so do your teammates. So no one brings up the fact like, hey, you're doing this really hard fucking thing, and you're in the middle of it, and it takes about 3 hours. Are you nervous? You're only 30 minutes in. No one fucking does that. No one would ever do that. The announcers don't even do it, and they know those guys can't hear them. And the fans don't talk about it until it gets later on in the game, and you can feel that tension building. And it's basically acknowledged, but no one verbally acknowledges it.
Okay.
So this is just another example in sports of how you don't say shit like this out loud. And what's hilarious about this is we're watching this game at my friend's house, and this friend who isn't a fan of football, he's just kind of there because it's a thing to be there for.
Right.
And he has no superstitions. He doesn't believe in superstitions. And he just says out loud, like, wouldn't it suck if he threw an interception right now? Literally everyone fucking looked at him like, what the fuck is wrong with you? Like, why would you say that? And I swear to God, the very next play, Jay Cutler threw an interception. And I was fucking pissed. I was like, why would you say that? And he didn't understand why I was angry or why anyone else was annoyed with him. And like, I tried to explain to him that you just don't say shit like that. And trying to explain that to someone who doesn't believe at all in superstition is just an exercise in futility because it becomes a debate about superstition itself. And here's the thing skeptics of superstition don't understand and need to understand, that if you want to disprove a superstition or make a superstitious person feel dumb or look stupid or change their beliefs, you don't actively engage in the superstition's circumstance, which is very hard to say 3 times in a row. If you want to prove...
Superstitious circumstance?
Yeah, keep trying.
Superstitious circumstance. Superstitious...
So there you go. So if you want to disprove something, if you want to prove that something is stupid, then just keep your fucking mouth shut. And I mean that, because it's like, if you want to prove that something bad would have happened regardless of whether or not you said something, you can't prove it if you say something and it happens. If something happens and no one said anything and there was no correlation to attach to, you can be like, see? It had nothing to do with it. No one said anything, right? But people don't think of it that way. They think of like, I know it seems that way, but no one should be mad at me for saying that. And it's like, if it happens, then it proves it wasn't tied to anything if you just keep your mouth shut. But if you say it out loud, you're basically saying, like, let's tempt fate to prove fate doesn't exist. And then if it happens, then you're like, well, even though my logic was I'm going to tempt fate, and when it didn't happen, tell everyone they're wrong, now that the circumstances make me look wrong, I'm just going to say fate is stupid, superstitions are stupid, you're stupid. And it's like, if you do that, you're kind of an asshole. And I'm not saying that I'm justified because I get upset over a fucking, sport, grown men throwing a fucking football around. But it's just trying to get you guys to understand how superstitions can affect people. And it's just like how you don't say, if something's going wrong, you don't say out loud, like, it couldn't get any worse. Like, that's every asshole in every movie and TV show you've ever seen.
It's like, couldn't get any worse, then it starts raining.
It's just another example of tempting fate. And that's what superstitions are all attached to. It's whether or not you're trying to bring good luck to you or ward off bad luck. And when people say things like that, like, I sincerely hope one day the superstition becomes attached that in order to avoid the bad juju, that it basically brings down on everyone present, that person must immediately be punched in the face. As a side note, Scarish does not endorse punching anyone in the face. Please do not do that. That said, if that happened, maybe they should just keep their fucking mouth shut. No, please don't punch anyone. But
we don't condone violence.
If you're thinking, Adam, like, that's a bit much, like, think of how many superstitions people hold that are, like, personal and weird and are way more than just striking someone. Like, striking someone is violent. I don't condone violence. But, like, think about athletes. Like, I'm talking about sports here. And here's my next example. This is a famous one, is Nomar Garcia Parra. You've probably never heard of him, Robin. He had this ritual. He was a baseball player that he would do when he'd come up to bat. And sports fans or people that have heard of him, he's a very pretty guy, by the way. He was married to the captain of the women's soccer team when they won. I forget her fucking name. She's so much better of an athlete than he is, and I feel bad about that now.
What?
But
the Olympic one?
Yeah. And the World Cup one.
Yeah.
God damn it. What was her name? I'm going to remember it after the show. I'm going to feel terrible. But anyone who knows who he is and has ever seen him play knows what I'm talking about. He would step up to the plate, and this is 100% true. He would do the following every single at-bat. He would adjust an armband on his right arm, which had to be red, regardless of the team he was on. He would tap home plate with his bat, and then he had to quickly touch the helmet bill, then the end of his bat, then back to his helmet bill. So it was like tap, tap, tap. And sometimes if it was his first at-bat, he would mix in the sign of the cross on his jersey. And then you think, wow, that's a lot of shit to do, right? Oh, we're not done. Next comes this synchronized dance that he would do where he would basically like unstrap both of his gloves, his batting gloves, then strap them back, tighten them, loosen them, tighten them, strap them. And he would do it like a specific amount of times, usually like 8 to 10. He'd go right to left, then he'd cross his hands over them, then he'd uncross them, and he'd repeat this 4 times at least. They've never caught him on camera doing it less than 4 times, which is nuts. By the way, when he's doing this shit with his gloves, he's also tapping his toes where he'd dig in his cleats a little bit, kind of like the dog after she takes a pee, where she like kicks. He's also doing that while he's moving his thing. It's literally like a synchronized dance. And he would rotate his bat in tight counterclockwise circles while he was doing this stuff because he was also holding his bat while he was adjusting his gloves. Every single fucking at bat.
How long ago was this guy playing?
This was like 90s to late 2000s when he retired. So he played for the Cubs eventually. He was famous for being on the Boston Red Sox. He wasn't on the team when they won the World Series finally. He had left the team. But it's just like, this is a superstition that he had. It's almost to the point of obsessive compulsive disorder, where he had to do this before every at bat, regardless of whether or not he did it.
They let him do it?
It's like he wasn't in the box yet. And it's like, if you want to speed up baseball, don't yell at the pitchers for shaking off signs. Yell at the hitters for all this crazy shit they do before they step in. Because like, this stuff is not just tolerated, but it's like,
superstitious sport.
It's extremely superstitious, and most sports are. And like, baseball players in general are just weird. And as a Cubs fan, I remember watching him do it. Like, I'm a Cubs fan, and he became a Cub for a bit. And that's the thing, is like, that wasn't even the weirdest thing I heard of on the Cubs at the time I was watching the Cubs. Like, and this one is like, it's really weird. Like, this one is weird AF. So most batters, like Nomar, wear batting gloves for better grip and to kind of avoid ripping up your hands because you're swinging like 4 to 5 times a game, or 4 to 5 at bats a game, depending on how good you are of a player, depending on how much you swing. You're going to get calluses, you're going to rip up your hands, right?
Yeah, you got to swing away.
I hate you so much. You're like, what thing can I work in right now? But there was this guy on the Cubs named Moises Alou. Some of you guys may remember him, the whole Bartman thing. He was the guy that tried to catch the ball. Moises Alou was not the person who would wear batting gloves. Not a lot of people were like him. He just went barehanded, didn't give a shit. So you're probably thinking like, wow, he probably had some serious calluses built up on his
Some
hands.
big dick energy.
Big dick energy right there. And what's really crazy about Moises Alou is none of that shit. It's not that he thought that batting gloves were bad luck or they'd affect you in a different way. It's how he decided he was going to build up his calluses. This isn't so much a superstition as it's kind of like a cultural belief that this will aid you, is to build up calluses on his hands. He consistently pissed all over his hands. 100% true. Not even joking, because it was believed that it would give him calluses on his hands and he wouldn't need to use the batting gloves. So whether or not the superstition of batting gloves being bad luck or affecting you in a different way, mixing with this cultural belief that pee on your hands gives you calluses, that's what he did. And you must be thinking like, he is insane. No one would do that. Well, actually, Jorge Posada, who was the catcher for the New York Yankees, also did this exact same thing and also did not wear batting gloves for the exact same reason. And it's like, this is bizarre shit. And what's so fascinating to me is like, I remember growing up and hearing about athlete superstitions and some very narrow ones like, oh, these people don't wash their shirt or they have lucky shorts. Jordan had lucky shorts. He wore them under his shorts for every game. And like, if they weren't there, he always thought they were going to lose the game. And there's all these weird things, but like, what I always thought about was, if you have these superstitions for your performance and you're traveling all the time, you have to have some superstitions for your travel, because I'm always afraid to get on a plane, just a little bit. And I don't know if you guys have ever heard of John Madden. There's this game called Madden that people play.
Yeah.
It's about the foosballs.
Yeah.
And John Madden was a coach for the Raiders and then a famous announcer after that. John Madden refused to step foot on a plane. He was convinced if he stepped foot on a plane, that plane would fucking crash and he would die. He was so convinced his entire career as a coach and as a broadcaster. He just
drove everywhere?
He had a fucking bus and he drove literally everywhere. And like, he would volunteer.
Did he take players with him?
Yeah, if they wanted to come too, if they were superstitious about being on planes, he would not travel on a plane. That man didn't travel on a plane for decades.
What made him finally get on one?
He died. He didn't get on a plane. He did not get on a plane. What's funny is like he had his sidekick Pat Summerall. They announced games together all the time. Eventually, Pat Summerall retired, and then Al Michaels took over. He's still broadcasting with Chris Collinsworth. People always said that they hate broadcasters. Whatever, it's a hard job. I talk to a microphone a lot. If you have to do it for a live sporting event and try and think of something entertaining to say, that's not easy. Anyways, Al Michaels took over as the new sidekick to John Madden. And they're talking.
I think they should just always say, "See that ludicrous display last night?"
I hate you so much. That's a good IT crowd reference, though. But what's funny about this is the first game they did together, they were having a good announcement. They sound good together. They had good traffic. They weren't talking over each other. And Al Michaels said, like, my goal for our time we're going to spend together is I want to get you on a plane. And they were showing like the two of them talking to each other, and you should have seen John Madden's face. He was just like, that will never happen. And he had "fuck you" written all over his face. He's like, I am not getting on a fucking plane. Like, it is not going to happen. Because some people hold these deep-seated beliefs that, like, not just, like, ward off bad things, but, like, something bad will certainly happen if I don't do what I've always done. And it's like, I cannot ride on a plane or I will die. And that's kind of more of a phobia than a superstition. But it's also a superstition. Because it's like, he had this idea that he had to be on a bus. He had to travel. He had this job where he traveled all the fucking time, but he couldn't ride on the plane. He refused to do it.
I don't know. It's like when my mom called me that one time and was like, I had a dream that you drowned. You should stay away from water. And we were just about to go on our trip to Japan. Like, great. I'm about to get on a plane.
We're crossing the Pacific Ocean. Thank you so fucking much.
Great.
Appreciate that. So when I thought about that, I was like, who else travels a lot? Actors travel a lot. Okay, let's find some actors that have some bizarre superstitions, especially since we're boarding a plane in less than 12 hours.
Oh, God.
So this is funny. Jennifer Aniston did not know this. Super superstitious.
We're boarding a plane in like 5 hours.
That's not that soon. It's 6.5 hours. Holy shit. We have so much to get done.
Yeah.
So Jennifer Aniston states that every single time she flies, when she crosses the threshold onto the plane to finally step on the plane, she has to do it with her right foot. She's done it every time she's ever flown. And while she's crossing that threshold with her right foot, she has to tap the outside of the plane. And she does it every single time for good luck. And I'm thinking about that. I'm like, she travels all the time. And maybe I need a ritual because we're traveling more and more. And it's starting to like kind of creep me out.
I think we fly like 3 or 4 times this year.
At least. And it's just like, it's creepy. She says it's for good luck. And like whatever works, because she's still around. So clearly it works. I mean, airline travel is supposed to be the safest form of travel there is because of the ratio of like traveling vehicles and like completed trips to actual accidents, which is good to tell yourself right before you're about to get on the fucking plane. And kind of to do a speed round here.
Man, I kind of want to bring a face mask now that I'm going over disease.
Oh, God. Here's a handful of superstitions I've never heard of because I wanted to do this. Then I'm going to finish with one more story because I talk too much. But here's some I've never heard of. And if you heard of these or have done these or actively do any of these, hit us up using the superstitious hashtag. Again, supers tit ish. All one word. Cram it all together. Supers tit ish. So apparently, you're supposed to give a penny to someone if they gift you anything that has a blade on it. And if you don't, it's a sign that your relationship will be severed from them.
Wow.
So you have to give them something in return, and it has to be a penny.
You're supposed to give, when you give someone a purse or a wallet, you're supposed to give it to them with cash in it, too.
I'd never heard that until I met you, too.
Yeah.
I did not ever know that. I don't think you've given me a wallet, and I don't think it had cash in it. So
yeah, well, I bought it, so it doesn't really matter.
Wow. Yeah, good thing. Good thing, because that wasn't in your rules when you first told them. Another thing that I had never heard of is you don't go straight home after a funeral. Thinking back, I've been to a lot of funerals. I've never really gone straight home because everyone goes to eat afterwards to kind of be around each other and mourn together. But they say it's because spirits will follow you home, and you're supposed to go to a restaurant or like any other place or business or store. And to me, that's hilarious because it's like, so you're not supposed to go home because spirits will follow you home. So you're just going to drop them off at the restaurant. So I guess they get haunted instead. It's kind of a dick move.
Oh, God. Gotta stop at this Olive Garden, guys.
Right? Fuck Olive Garden. I actually really like Olive Garden. Here's one from Lithuania. Whistling indoors invites in evil. I think I've heard that from you.
Yeah, that's what my parents say, too.
Yeah, like if you whistle
indoors. You're not
indoors.
supposed to whistle at night and stuff like that.
Where are you supposed to whistle? Like, I like whistling.
While you work.
Wow. I fucking hate. What if you're working at night indoors?
Yeah, in the caves, mines, and your dwarves.
So here's a fun one for those of you who don't drink under any circumstances. There's a lot of people who just don't like drinking. I grew up with friends that just decided they were never going to drink. There's a lot of people who are sober because they're recovering alcoholics or addicts of some sort. And there's some people who are allergic to alcohol. There's a lot of people out there who don't drink.
Yeah, no, my coworker was saying his wife is allergic to alcohol. And when he was describing how bad she gets, I was like, oh, that actually does sound like being allergic to alcohol because when I drink, my face gets red.
That's just a natural reaction. You're ingesting poison when you drink alcohol, just so you know.
His wife, grows big, red, huge splotches under
You get
his skin.
giant hives. Yeah.
I was like, dang.
I have a friend who's allergic to wine unless it's specifically made in a specific type of way. But for those of you folks who are not drinkers, this one's kind of fun. So you don't, under any circumstances, cheers or toast with water.
What?
Never heard this before, but Germans believe
cranberries
that if you do this, you are actually wishing death on all parties involved that you cheersed with water. So I guess this one isn't so much don't cheers with water, but only cheers with water if you want those people to die.
So they're like, let's cheers with this vodka. Hold on, let me pour myself some. And it's water. And you're like, y'all motherfuckers die.
Exactly.
Holy
this is apparently,
crap.
It reminds me of Inglourious Bastards where he does the 3 wrong.
Yeah.
And Germans just have some shit that they do their way. And if you don't do it their way, they will notice.
Well, that's 3 in sign language too.
Well, and they'll notice and they'll shoot you to death in a bar. Spoilers.
Oh, yeah.
So hopefully you've seen Inglourious Bastards.
If you haven't, you got to go watch it. It's so good.
This one I thought of you. Knitting outside, even though you crochet, knitting outside can prolong winter. I
want to do that.
This one's from Iceland, and it's funny because I was like, Iceland, it's always cold there.
Let's go knit outside right now.
I have been tricked by those tricksters. Iceland is green, Greenland is ice. They did that on purpose to trick everyone, and it still fucks with me.
Finkel. Finkel is Einhorn.
I hate you so much. That was my favorite meme when the guy from the Bears missed the field goal, is they showed Ray Finkel from Ace Ventura.
The laces were in.
And then on the other side, they showed Cody Parkey, which is the Bears kicker, and it said, Parkey is Finkel. Finkel is Parkey. I was like, that's fucking good. It's making it easier. So, superstitions are everywhere. We're not exactly sure where most of them come from, but most people that have heard them either participate or humor it,
Yeah.
Some people are staunchly against it. Some people, it's against their religion to be superstitious. I grew up around some of those people. I had friends, and I had a girlfriend, and my friend had a girlfriend who were Jehovah's Witness. And
wow, you dated a Jehovah's Witness?
I did, and they are very not superstitious. They're very non-traditional in certain aspects.
They're very literal.
There's certain things that they don't celebrate, and I'm just like, cool, whatever your beliefs are, that's you, But they're extremely non-superstitious, and there are people out there like that. So this final story is a personal one about superstition. And again, it's tied into sports because sports are a big thing in my life. So my junior year in high school, and it was kind of cool to type this up because I was like remembering like, wow, this is actually kind of like cool. I forgot about this. My junior year in high school, our baseball team was really, really, really good. And they were ranked super high in our division or our class or whatever they call it, which was 2A. And I don't know if you know the system, but like 1A is the smallest. For our state, 5A was the highest. So our school had, I think, 400 to 500 people in it. At any given time, graduating classes were around 125. So we were 2A. 1A was super small schools. 5A was huge, like classes in the thousands. They're enormous schools. So we're 2A, very small school, ranked super high in our division. We were ranked number 1 in state in the 2A class.
All right.
If you're going to go to state, you don't play 3A or 4A or 5A. You play within your little classification.
Okay.
So we're ranked number 1 in 2A. And in the local newspaper, they would rank all schools across the board, regardless of size. We were ranked number 2 almost all year. And other schools that were 5A, because there was a lot around us that were huge schools, were pissed. Like, they shouldn't be that high. They're small. Their talent pool is small. They just play well because they're playing against bad teams. Total assholes about it. So later on in that season, the number 1 overall ranked school in the state of Indiana was like fucking 10 miles away from us. They're a 5A school. And we talked so much shit, we played an exhibition game against them. 2A versus 5A. We should have been crushed. We fucking won. We won in extra innings.
Okay.
They ranked us number 1 in the papers. Favored to go to state. Favored to crush everyone. We lost in the regionals. Sucks. It happens. And for those of you who don't know, the classifications, like, if you're entering the playoffs, so to speak, for your high school career, goes for, like, at least for us,
and then
it was
state?
sectionals, regionals,
Okay.
semi-state, state.
I see. Okay.
State means you're the last 2 teams. Semi-state means you're the last 4 teams, regionals and so forth, sectionals, blah, blah,
Right.
blah, blah, blah. So we were very disappointed. And what was cool about it is that our juniors and our seniors, and I was a junior, they had played together for a really long time. So they were like, these people have been playing together for like years. They know each other. They're all really good. They have a deep talent pool. And when we lost, we're like, well, fuck, we don't know what next year is going to be like. We don't know how our senior year is going to be like because the next year's juniors haven't really played on varsity that much because there's been such a deep talent pool for juniors and seniors previously. So going into the next season, and I'm totally going off script because now this is all just coming off my brain.
Okay.
So
Jesus.
now the next season comes in, and we're not ranked very high, but we're not ranked very low. No one's really sure what to expect, and the season starts, and we're winning some, and we're losing some. And I've made a commitment at this point that I'm going to attend every single game. And as a side note, I'm not good at baseball. I would love to be. I have a decent arm. It's not very accurate. I can't get under a ball to save my life if it's a fly ball. I can't shag fly balls for shit. Shagging is what they call like practicing catching fly balls or pop outs or whatever. And I can't bat for shit anymore. So it sucks.
So you're not good at anything.
I'm not good at all the aspects in baseball you need to be good at, which
All
is
right.
weird because my last name's Diaz.
That doesn't make any sense.
My dad raised me to be good at football. My dad fucking hated baseball, so I barely ever tried playing. And then when I finally tried, I was like, not good at this. This sucks. So I'd always like to watch, though. So I'd always go to the games. Plus, my best friend was on the team. My best friend's name is John. And I was like, I'm going to go watch John play. I'm going to go support him. Like, it's a really good team. He's a good guy. I hope they do well. So I would go. John was dating a girl at the time. And I'm not going to say her name. She won't listen to this. Doesn't matter. But I'm not going to say her name. He was dating a girl at the time. And I never really liked her that much in high school. She's a very nice person now. She has kids. She has a husband, whatever. I'm going to talk a little shit about her. But fuck her. So
What the fuck?
here's what happens. This is my personal story. This is my story, okay? So I'm going to these games throughout the year. And we're doing well. And it's like the team is on the verge of clicking. You can tell. Like something's there, but for whatever reason, we can't quite get it figured out.
Okay.
And I'm having fun watching these games. And it just occurs to me at one point that only one thing is consistent about every single game we've lost that season. We're about a third of the way into the season.
That she went.
She went to every game they lost. And I kind of pointed it out to John. I'm like, hey, man, have you noticed that she is there every time you guys lose? I'm like, do you get nervous? He's like, no, I don't even know she's there. Like, I'm just playing, and then you guys walk over from the school for the home games, and, like, for the road games, I never know when anyone shows up. And I'm like, I figured that, because most of the games you lose, like, you have nothing to do with it. You know, like, whether he's playing right field or left field, whatever, he's not, like, committing an error or not, like, throwing it home in time. It's just, like, a confluence of events happen that have nothing to do with each other, seemingly, and the team loses. And so, being the dick that I was back in high school, and still kind of am to some degree, because I'm telling this story, but I told her at lunch, like around everyone, like, hey, I just want you to know it's your fucking fault. Like, you're
an asshole.
I was like, you're the bad luck person.
You are an asshole.
She was rude and she pissed me off, and I was like, I'm going to say something and I'm going to be honest about it and it's going to piss her off. So I told her, like, you're the bad luck person. And She got my ass. She was super pissed. And she was
Man,
like,
I can't even get in your ass.
You fuck you. So she was super angry. She bitched me out. She told me how superstitions are bullshit and that people who believe in them are stupid and I'm being fucking dumb and I'm an asshole.
Did you say
and
you're stupid?
Everyone's sitting there at that table, like she's like appealing, and I hate people that do this. Like they appeal to other people who are trying to stay out of this argument.
Yeah.
Because I'm acting like a child. Now she's behaving like a child because I provoked her into it. And these
well,
people
you are children.
These people are trying to rise above it. And she's like, right? And everyone at that table are like, no, you're fucking wrong. Like, you're the only thing that's consistently going there. And, like, I don't know whether it's your bad energy or the fact that you're just being a dick or the fact that you don't care. But, like, if it doesn't matter, you just stay away from the games. Like, what does it matter?
Yeah.
So she, of course, appeals to John. And John's like, look, you don't even like going to the games. So what does it matter?
Whoa.
So she's fucking
I'm
furious.
assuming they broke up after.
She was so pissed. No, she didn't break up with him for this. So she was pissed. So immediately she's like, what am I going to do? Fuck you. I'm not going to any of your games. Like, I'm not going to go see you anymore. And so, in my mind, I got the outcome I wanted. It worked out. I antagonized her. I pissed her off. Damaged their relationship.
They lost anyway.
And so, I went to John's house, and I was talking to John's dad. John's dad was that dad who's, like, super into his son's sports, as at every game will take him to, like, batting practice and tell him, like, what he needs to do to change his mechanics. He's just, like, the super sports dad. So, not the charge the field and beat the shit out of the umpire, but close. So, I tell John's dad my theory. And John's dad's like, I don't want her at any more games. He's totally 100% on my side.
Wow.
So I'm like, fuck yeah, I have my army. Everyone's on my side. And hopefully now she won't show up. She doesn't want to come anyway, so fuck it. I'm going to be there, and she's super pissed at me. She's super pissed at John. So she doesn't come. And I continue to go. Road games, home games. And I shit you not, I haven't checked in a while. I haven't really thought of this story in a while. I went to Boone Grove High School in Northwest Indiana.
Did they have the best record?
They finished the season with the longest winning streak in the history of Boone Grove High School.
Wow.
Which is over 100 years old. No bullshit. They won every fucking game when she stopped going. Every single game. And the paper caught wind of it. They fucking wrote articles about all of our pitchers, all of our players. My friend John got an article wrote about him because he got into a car accident in December of our junior year. I told that story last time about my cousin cutting my friend out of the car. Yeah. It was his girlfriend with his blood on her face that came to my house.
Gosh.
It was his hand that had all the tendons severed.
It's her goddamn fault because she was in the fucking car.
No, that was just, she wasn't in the car. She was in the front. She was driving in front of him. He was driving behind her.
Okay.
That's why she didn't get hurt. She probably would have died if she would have been in the car with him.
Shut up.
So he had his tendon severed on his hand.
Oh, he couldn't play
So
anymore.
they were like, this guy had to rehab to get to this season, and he's fucking killing it.
Oh, okay.
So they did a whole article about him. They did articles about people on our team. It was amazing. Everyone was fucking hyped. We finished the season. It was like a 20-game win streak. It was unheard of. We hadn't done it. We had a junior who had a 0.00 ERA.
Shut up.
No one got a fucking run off him the whole season.
Wow.
It was awesome. It was just this feeling. Everyone's riding high. The whole school is talking about it. Like the region is talking about, like, they're going to fucking crush everyone. Favored to win state. We had never won state in the 100-year history of our high school, which is slightly pathetic. Pretty sure since I've left, we won state in baseball. Actually, I'm 100% sure. We won state in baseball, which is super fucking cool. So this year, we're getting to go to sectionals. Everyone goes to sectionals, no matter how bad you are. Everyone makes the playoffs in high school sports. And you get this, you get this big tournament, and the best seed typically gets the worst seed to play against. So we got the worst seed to play against. The team we were playing against had lost more games than they had won. And we're riding high on this win streak, and everyone wants to go to the game. So guess who wants to go to the game? I said everyone.
Oh, God.
I mean everyone. John's girlfriend wants to go to the game. So I make an issue out of this because I am very superstitious. But
Are you very superstitious?
The thing you're not on. I have the lyrics later on my script.
Okay.
But the thing to remember about this at this point is this whole team is riding high. And when something is working, something is clicking, you don't introduce things into that change it or change the mindset of whatever it might be. And you certainly don't reintroduce something that is known for not supporting what is going on and is consistently there when bad things happen.
Right.
So I'm not telling the whole team about it, but I am talking to John about it. I'm talking to John's dad. John's dad is like, if she's there, I'll take her to her car and I'll tell her to get the fuck out. John's dad's way too nice to do that, but that's how he wanted to be, you know? And this is 100% true. The night before the game, the night before the first game in sectionals, they had a curfew. They had to be home by 9 o'clock, and the coach was going to call every single player, I think, and make sure that they were home. They were going to call their house phone, make sure they're home. So that same night, John and his girlfriend had tickets downtown Chicago to go see the Flaming Lips.
Oh, no.
So they went downtown, and everyone went on late, and all the opening acts ran super long, and the Flaming Lips weren't even on. And John knew they had to leave if he was going to get home on time.
No.
He was going to get home 30 minutes late. And he was freaking out because he knew his coach was going to be fucking pissed, and he wasn't going to start. He wasn't going to start the first game of the playoffs of his senior year. So he told his girlfriend, like, hey, we have to fucking go. This is important to me. Like, we can see this concert again. We can go see them again somewhere else, you know? And she was fucking furious. And they left. Because he's like, I'm leaving. Like, I need to go home. And we said we were going to leave if this happened, and we're leaving. So on the way home, she doesn't want to talk to him. Super pissed. And at some point during that car ride, she tells him, I hope you fucking lose tomorrow.
No!
The first time I heard this story, I'm pretty sure I heard, I hope you lose tomorrow, and I hope it's your fault. But later on, I was told she only said, I hope you fucking lose tomorrow.
What a biatch.
And in addition to that, she told him, like, I'm fucking going tomorrow. Like, to ensure she could do everything to make them lose. So the game starts. She's fucking there. I'm furious. And I don't believe in any way, shape, or form, nor have I ever put my hands on a woman.
Okay.
But the entire game, I was just like, just pick her up. She's super small. You're 6'1". Throw her over your shoulder like a caveman. Take her to the fucking parking lot. And if she freaks out about it, throw her in the fucking dumpster, because then she'll leave. But I wouldn't do it. I didn't want to be the fucking guy who like got into a fucking fight with a chick on the sidelines. So I'm like, all right, whatever. We'll be fine. We're a great team. So the first inning starts, and the batters go 1, 2, 3. We don't get on base. They get straight swept out. So I'm like, fuck, that's not good. Not a good start, but it's okay. We'll be fine. And then it happens again. And we get a hit, and then a couple outs. Then a double play. I'm like, well, fuck, man. This game is burning by really quick. And then the other team scores a couple runs off of our number one pitcher. And I'm like, well, shit. Okay, he'll settle down. He does. He settles down. And then we score 1 run. We're only behind by 1. So I'm like, we're good. And then suddenly it's the last inning. And if we don't score right now in 3 outs, our playoffs are over. We're gonna lose to the worst team in one of the smallest divisions. We're favored to go to state, and we're gonna lose right off the bat. And I'm just sitting there, and she's sitting there, and I could just feel this wave of fucking hate coming off of her. Like, you could tell this is everything she wanted. She wanted to see the Flaming Lips. She wants his high school baseball career, which wound up being the end of his baseball career.
Wow.
To end like this, because she's a petty fucking bitch. And we're sitting there, and someone gets on base. Someone gets in scoring position. Everyone's getting hyped. And then we make the 3rd out. And that's how it ended. It ended with our high school senior baseball team losing the first round of the playoffs in the sectionals to the worst team. And it's exactly what she had wanted to happen. And I'm
Did
sure
they break up because of that?
No.
Oh, god damn it.
I'm sure if you talk to her today, she'd be like, I didn't think that would happen. She still will not believe in superstitions. She will not listen to the show because she probably thinks it's silly. But whether or not she actually thought superstition was real, she fed into it in hopes that it would affect people because she just wanted to be a dick, basically, because she didn't get what she wanted. And it's one of those moments in my life where I was like, look, superstition might be complete bullshit. It might 100% be nonsense. But if you really wanted him to lose, you could have just stayed home. And maybe they would have still lost. And then you could have had a bitchy I told you so speech. But her going there and doing that, like, I'm sure other people on the team knew about this. I'm sure they noticed. And I'm not saying that it's what affected them. I'm not saying anything like that. The other team just played better. They really did. But after that, I was just like, I don't understand why people thumb their nose in fate on the behalf of someone else. It's a fucking dick move. To do that and to know that the consequences will not come down on you in any way, shape, or form. It will not affect you at all. But it means the world to someone else. Dancing on someone else's dreams is the dickest thing that you can possibly do. So if you're not a superstitious person and you see someone who's very superstitious, you don't have to do anything. Just let them be. Because guess what? If the outcome that they're doing all these crazy rituals for doesn't happen and they've done everything properly, guess what? As soon as the Bears lost, I took that nail polish off my toe.
What?
It didn't matter. I'll put a different color on there if you want me to put it on there.
Oh, man, he has socks on.
But the point is all these things that you build up in your brain that you think actually matter probably don't. And if they do, it doesn't hurt anyone to do them unless, like, your superstition is you have to punch someone in the face. But this is my superstition number 1. This is my first introduction into the superstitions for the year of 2019. Because despite being very skeptical about most things I hear, I am also very superstitious about a lot of things. I knock on wood all the time. I do it. I have very weird sports-related superstitions, and guess what? Sometimes they work. My same friend, John, he came into my house one day, and we sat down. We're like, what's on TV? We're about to leave. We're about to go somewhere, and I put on the Boston Red Sox versus the New York Yankees. Boston Red Sox were losing 3-0 in the AL Championship Series. We're like, let's watch them lose. Let's go to the bar. We turned it on, and they won. They came back and won in extras. It was fucking insane. Nothing like that we'd ever seen. And they're down 3-1 still. There's no way they're going to win. No baseball team had ever come back from that deficit. And the Yankees had always won 27 championships. The Red Sox hadn't won in 88 fucking years or whatever it was. And we're like, you know what we should do? Tomorrow, let's sit in these same spots and see what happens. We'll eat Cheez-Its the same way we ate Cheez-Its and watch this game. So we did. And guess what? Same fucking thing. Extra innings, they won. So our friends picked up on this. Game 6 happens. We get to the same seats. My friend brings his girlfriend over. I might have already told this story on the show. She comes over. She's telling us how fucking stupid we are. It's the stupidest thing I've ever seen. I want to go out. I want to party. Why are we here watching fucking baseball? And I explained to her the situation, the whole thing. We sat here. We don't know if it works. As soon as they start losing, we'll fucking leave. But since we sat in these seats, they've started winning. And this team has been getting their asses kicked. And John's a White Sox fan. I'm a Cubs fan. We have nothing invested into this except for, fuck the Yankees.
You just want to see what happens.
We just want to see what happens. So we sit in those seats, and guess what happens in Game 6? They fucking win again. And they're going to go to a Game 7 to try and win. For the first time, a team down 3-0 is going to go to a Game 7. And the next night, everyone is there. My whole group of friends is at my place, and they fucking make sure no one sits in our seats. Cheez-Its are fucking ready, bro. My friend brings his girlfriend, and she's telling me how important this game is.
Oh my gosh.
About how it's never happened before because her dad wouldn't fucking stop talking about it. And guess what happens? The Boston Red Sox beat the shit out of the New York Yankees in Game 7.
Wow.
They went to the World Series. They won 4 straight games. They broke their curse. And I don't know if it's because of me and John, but what I can fucking tell you...
Did you guys sit in the same seats during the playoffs?
We didn't even watch the World Series, man.
Wow.
We had other shit we had to do. We were like going out of town. I think we might have been going to Canada. I can't even fucking remember, but we're like, they're fucking good. They beat their demons. They got past the Yankees. They did something no one's ever done. They're going to cruise to a World Series victory. And there's a lot of people, and I mean this from the bottom of my heart, because I'm a Cubs fan. We went 116 years. 108 years, my bad. 108 years.
I was going to say.
108 years before we won a World Series. And back when the Bartman shit happened, for those of you who don't know, basically, some guy hit a foul ball that could have been caught by a player in the field, and the Cubs eventually went on to give up a bunch of runs, and Cubs fans blamed him for it. And it might have changed the game. It might not have. It doesn't really matter. What matters is that he did that. The Cubs went on to lose the series.
People threatened to murder him.
There's documentaries about it. It's crazy. But after the Cubs lost the series that would have taken them to their first World Series in 60 years, my friends lived in Chicago. They were walking around Chicago, and they saw this old couple. 80s, 90s for sure. And everyone was walking around that city fucking stunned. They couldn't believe what had happened. They couldn't believe the Cubs blew it again. And this old couple walked up to my friends, and they were all talking about how they couldn't believe it, how it reminded them of 1984. My friends weren't even born in 84. They were telling them all about 84. Similar stuff happened, and all the other times it had happened to the Cubs. And the old man looked at my friends, and he said, I really wanted to see them win one time before I died. And he was so fucking sad.
Oh, no.
And that's how much that shit means to some people. And it didn't mean shit to me and John for the Red Sox to win. We didn't care about that curse. It wasn't our team. But we knew, for whatever reason, we seemed like the good luck guys. We really truthfully did. We felt that way too. And we're like, we're going to sit here because of what happened to the Cubs and see if we can make sure if there's any fucking old people watching, getting ready to wander around Boston, like, man, I wish I could have seen them win before I died. We're going to make sure they don't have to make that walk. And guess what? They didn't. And then the Red Sox have won 2 World Series again since then.
Wow.
So superstition is just a bizarre fucking thing. And as a skeptical, rational person, I look at some of my actions and I'm like, I am insane. And I know this is probably the longest topic I've ever done. But it's also something where it's like, I cannot tell you why these things happen the way they happened in my lifetime. What I can tell you is that as soon as I decided that I was stupid and I was being irrational, everything changed. And every time I've ever tried to adhere to a superstition, sometimes incredible things happen. So that's the last thing I'm going to say on superstition, because this one went really long, and I know you have a really long one too, but people keep telling us they want us to do longer topics. So there you go. That's my first shot at superstition, and I hope you didn't hate it. So
I thought you said you had the lyrics in there somewhere.
I do, but I went off script because I got so invested in this story. I didn't even have the thing about the Red Sox in my script.
You suck. Okay. All right. That was a really good topic.
Thank you.
You're very, very, very enthusiastic.
Thank you. I do appreciate that. So the last thing I'll say about this is, like, maybe when you believe in things that you don't understand, you suffer.
Of course. Okay.
And maybe superstition ain't the way. But double middle fingers to the people that tempt fate on the behalf of someone else. And shout out to the Boston Red Sox. Congratulations.
Okay. All right, cool. So now mine isn't as, like, uplifting and interesting. Let me just depress everyone.
Bring us down, Robin. Bring us down.
Yeah, that's how I like to end the episode. No, not really. But so this week I'm going to do the Black Death or the Great Plague. And last week, Adam went over the Spanish flu, and that definitely did open my eyes because I had no idea how large an impact that had. And I don't think they taught us about that in school particular.
I heard of it during Contagion because they talked about how Spanish flu wiped out such a huge percent of the world's population. Yeah. And just like watching that movie, I was like, Matt Damon looks a bit derpy here. And then they said that line, and I was like, holy shit, like, that's a lot of people. Yeah. So, yeah, the more you look into it, and the more I looked into it, the more I kept hearing about this fucking disease and how much worse it was.
Yep. So, but it definitely puts things into perspective. And this definitely is the big one, and the one that I've definitely heard about, and they taught us in school.
I was taught about this in school too.
Yeah, and it's the Great Plague or the Black Death. And what's funny is the Black Death name, like the actual phrase, the Black Death, was used in a poem in 1350 by someone named Simon de Covin, I think is how you say his name. I don't know. And his poem was about the plague being attributed to a conjunction of Jupiter and Saturn.
Wow.
Which is not
was
at all true.
Was it retrograde or?
Yeah.
I don't know anything about it.
It was a retrograde.
I don't want to jump ahead. I have one question.
All right.
Ring Around the Rosie. Is that covered?
Nope. If you look at Snopes.com, it's false.
Okay.
Yeah.
Ring Around the Rosie was supposedly about plague victims, and like Pocket Full of Posy was like the flowers that made them smell nice because they didn't want people to know that they were a plague victim or something.
Yeah, go to Snopes.com. Lots of information.
Good to know.
I definitely checked that out.
I've always called this the Black Plague, and I've only realized until recently that that's not its name. And I think it's like,
because you were researching the other thing.
Yeah, and I think it's funny because I think we crossed over into a little bit of Mandela effect because it's the Black Death or the Great Plague, and I'm like, the Black Plague? What about the Great Death?
Or the Great Death. Anyway, so similar to how the Spanish flu was thought to spread, with scholars suggesting that the spread of the plague may be linked to Roman soldiers returning home from battle in the Persian Gulf in 165 AD.
Wow.
So I thought that was really cool because scholars think that that's what led to the collapse of the Roman empires. Like all these soldiers returned from the war and were like, disease everywhere.
Was this 1165 or 165? Wow. Oh my God.
Yeah. So that's how frightening this disease was and is. And the plague is definitely an unmitigated disaster. It's just absolutely horrible. And the cause at the time was unknown and just caused massive panic wherever it happened to crop up. And it cropped up over and over and over again.
It's like they even reference it in the Iliad, where it's like...
Really?
Yeah, in the Iliad, when they pretend to flee, when the Greeks build the Trojan horse and everything, they have plague going through their front lines because it always hits during wartime, it seems.
Yeah.
And they left their plague victims behind while they all hid. So when the Trojans came out to see that they're all gone, so to speak, they left the plague victims so that people would think like, oh, the gods cursed them.
Wow.
They cursed them with plague, and now they're leaving because they're apologetic and they don't want to all die. And the Trojan horse they built was supposed to be an offering to the gods to apologize.
Huh.
And it's like, that's how fucking long ago the plague has still been around.
It's crazy. So this guy named Francis Aidan wrote Gasquet, probably is how you say his name. I don't know. I'm looking at the camera like there's somebody looking.
I know. It's because we just did the live episode. I kept doing it too.
So this guy wrote about the quote unquote Great Pestilence in 1893. And he suggested that, quote, it would appear to be some form of the ordinary Eastern bubonic plague, end quote. That is what caused this great murder of people. And his interpretation was widely accepted for other ancient and medieval epidemics, including that of the Justinian plague from 541 to 700.
I kept seeing that one pop up too.
And in October of 2010, medical geneticists suggested that the origin of all three of the great waves of plague, Justinian, Black Death, and the modern plague, originated in China.
Wow. Everyone always blames China.
And I understand that China is totally overpopulated, but like, damn, dude, that's rude.
It's enormous, too.
Yeah, it's enormous.
I'd also like to point out that in the movie Contagion, they fucking blame China. I'm pretty sure.
It's because of this shit that they blame China.
Well, that's the thing, too. In that movie, they, of course, at the end, because they never figure out what happened, they show you before the whole thing started. And it was just like a bat shit into some pig food, and then the pig was eaten by some people. And it's like, it was a bat pig plague, basically.
Wow.
It was a disease that had spread to bats that then spread to humans. And because it took that spread from bats to pigs to humans, and because it took those 2 jumps, it made it like extremely difficult.
I'm just thinking about all the murdered turkeys.
I know, dude. That's fucking crazy, right?
All right. So, if you guys have ever seen pictures of like people wearing those bird-looking gas masks,
yes,
that's from the time of the plague.
Yep.
So you can thank the plague for that. And hopefully you have listened to the Spanish flu episode because...
if not, please listen to that one first because her plague is going to make mine look like shit. So I'd appreciate it if you listen to my disease first.
But if you have listened to it, then you understand that a pandemic isn't just a board game. It's disease that covers like wide areas. So countries, continents, like planets. Not that we know.
I was gonna say, like, yeah, that's what happened to Mars, dude.
Yeah, the water on Mars, Doctor Who.
That's good. That's a good reference.
Yeah.
That's a really good episode.
The phrase "bring out your dead" isn't just a line from Monty Python. Like
it has like actual historical reference.
Yeah, it's because back when numerous plagues were taking out huge chunks of the population, they needed people to get rid of the infected bodies. And
they would ring a bell and walk through the streets and like literally yell out,
your dead.
"Bring out your dead." There
have been a number of outbreaks of the plague, but the Black Death is one of the most devastating pandemics in human history, and it resulted in the death of 75 to 200 million people in Eurasia. And it took out at least 1/3 of Europe between 1347 and 1353.
1/3 of an entire
continent. Yeah.
That is insane.
What's insane is back during the 14th century, there were only 450 million people that existed.
It's like almost a mass
half.
extinction.
Yeah.
It quite literally is almost a mass extinction.
It's like insane. Taking that population down to 350, 375 million is in such a short amount of time is just absolutely mind-boggling. And if you think like now, we have 7 billion people, right?
7.77 as of 2019.
Oh my God, we're almost at 8 billion.
We're almost at 8.
When I was a little kid, they were teaching me there's only 6 billion people in the world.
The rate at which we have multiplied is growing exponentially. And if you look at that curve, it's like it is. And I mean, I don't want to step on your scary stuff because this is some scary shit. Like population growth compared to plagues is even more frightening because the word is best described as unsustainable.
Yeah. We're going to need a Thanos to come and snap.
No, fuck that. We're going to need another planet soon.
Anyway, you don't want to get snapped?
No, I don't. You know why? Because after Infinity War, they put up that fucking website where you could go and click it and see whether or not you died.
Did you die every time?
You lived, I died. And I was so pissed about it.
Okay, so anyway, in a world now of 7 billion people, almost 8 billion people, that's the equivalent of over 3 billion people dying.
That's fucking insane.
It's insane. There were only 450 million people back then. Like, oh my gosh. It literally took 200 years for the world population to recover from all that death.
Wow.
200 years it took for them to get back up to 450 million.
2 full centuries for them to just recover the population.
So this thing is it's no joke. And at points, there weren't even enough people to bury the dead.
Wow.
Yeah. That's how insane this whole thing was. And it's thought that the Black Death originated somewhere in the dry plains of Central Asia, traveling on the Silk Road, which was a trade route between the East and the West.
So it could have been everyone's fault.
It could have been anyone's fault.
See, Spanish flu was Northern Asia, so that's just all their fault.
So the Black Death reached Crimea in 1343. But there are graves that date back to 1338 and 1339 near Kyrgyzstan.
Nailed it. Got it in one.
That have evidence of inscriptions referring to plague. thought to mark the outbreak of it. So they don't really know where exactly it's from. But it's thought to have been carried by oriental rat fleas, which I'm just like, why does it have to be from Asia and come, you know what I mean? But you guys are the scientists. I'm just listening to you guys and doing what you guys have said.
No.
So they were carried by rat fleas living on black rats that traveled on merchant ships. And the fact that these ships were traveling through the Mediterranean basin in Europe, it's like no surprise how easily the plague spread, because it's just all these merchant ships, all these traders that are going through the Silk Road and stuff. Everyone's trading everything off, getting their germs on everything.
And it's not even just that, like, the people could have carried it off or that the rats could have carried it off. They literally all could have carried it off. Or, like, they could have moved an object that had one of these fleas just carrying it.
Yeah.
It's like, it's bizarre to think how horribly this could have spread. It did.
It wasn't only rats either. So other rodents could easily carry the plague that carried the fleas. It's just anywhere these things went, that's just where it spread.
Fleas are also very difficult to kill. Like, we had an animal come into our house when I was a kid that had fleas, and I remember trying to crush one, and it just would not die. And we had to gas our house because of it. Yeah. My mom was fucking pissed. It's exactly what she had feared her entire life. And I can't imagine someone being like, those fleas?
I'm like starting to itch. I'm starting to freak out.
It's like, those fleas, they're going to kill you.
Anyway, so because of the climates in Asia beginning to dry out, rodents were like, okay, we need to go to the more populated areas. Like, we need food. We need to get out of here. So
they all had a powwow.
Yeah. It's theorized, though, that the plague repeatedly wiped out whole rodent populations, but just kept having reoccurrences over and over and over again. So it's just absolutely insane how this plague kept coming back.
How often Mother Nature tried to exterminate everything.
Yeah, it's absolutely incredible. And by the end of 1346, there were reports of plague having reached seaports of Europe, stating, quote, India was depopulated, Tartary, Mesopotamia, Syria, and Armenia were all covered with dead bodies.
Oh my God.
Quote. Yeah. One hypothesis is that traders at these seaports fled once seeing all this plague and took these plague ships into other parts of Europe. And they just kept spreading it north. And
the further you ran, the further you took it.
Yeah. And one of the creepier things I read was that a ship set out from England in 1349 bound for the north. And the crew members, like, one got sick, and then the crew members just died off one by one until everybody on the ship died. And the disease lived on in all the other creatures that were still on board because they have a smorgasbord now. They can just eat whatever.
Right.
You know what I mean? And so this ghost ship ran aground near Bergen Harbor in Norway, where the rats...
Oh, poor Norway.
Yeah, where the rats and their accompanying fleas infected the country.
Wow.
So this ship had no one living on it anymore. It was a ghost ship.
It's not just a ghost
How
ship. That's a
creepy is
straight
that?
up plague boat.
Yeah. Oh, man, dude. It was... when I read that, I was like, that's the scariest shit.
Imagine seeing this from the shore and just seeing a fucking boat run aground. You'd be like, oh, that's kind of cool.
And then
you'd
all
be
these
like,
rats
why
start
are they
climbing out.
Why did they hit there? Where is everyone? What the fuck is with all the rats? Why is Bob coughing? Oh my God, we're all about to die.
Yeah, it's estimated a third of that country died.
Oh my God.
It's like, this shit is insane. And get this, during the 13th century, the Mongol conquest that was going on in China, after a particular siege, a Mongol army under a person named Johnny Beg, was suffering from the plague. And you know what they decided to do?
They hurled the dead bodies.
They catapulted the dead bodies.
I fucking knew it, dude.
They catapulted the infected bodies over the city walls of Catha in order to infect the inhabitants. I'm just like, what the hell is wrong with people?
Did it work?
Probably.
If I was a general and I'm like, someone's like, take this goddamn city, and I had plague going through, and I was like, all right, what do we do? I really want to get rid of these bodies. Huh. It's horrific.
It's absolutely horrific.
And brilliant. Like, it's horrific to think that you're spreading it to like a general population, not just an army. When you're doing it to a city, you're doing it to the civilians. It's just horrific to think of. But like, it would be less bad if they would have turned the catapults around and just flung them away from the army. But it's just like someone in there was like, well, you know what? Fuck it. And just started flinging them in.
So, Ships carried infected people and bodies, spreading them from country to country. And all this kind of reminds me of is the episode of Doctor Who.
Always a Doctor Who episode.
Called The Vampires of Venice, where they think that they're the only place that is safe from the supposed plague that's like rampant outside their city, when actually it's just like the vampire alien that's taken over their place. And
I don't remember that episode. No, I gotta rewatch it.
Yeah, you definitely have to rewatch it, because I actually really like that episode.
I've only seen this series twice through, so there's definitely going to be episodes where I didn't pay attention the first time that actually overlap with an episode I didn't pay attention to the second time either. Yeah, so there's one or two out there.
That's the episode where the 11th Doctor, Amy kisses him, right? And so he decides, like, I gotta go get Rory. I'm gonna have them take him to Venice.
That was the very beginning of his season. Okay, right on. I do remember that episode. I probably only remember that episode like, fuck her, dude. Like, what are you doing? Karen Gillan, hit me up.
I just love when he shows up at Rory's bachelor party, like, so your fiance kissed me.
Right. So funny.
Anyway, so 1347, Egypt got infected. The disease then goes across the entire eastern coast. By January 1348, the shit hits Marseille, France, and then in Italy, the disease it goes from Italy. Disease hits France, Spain, Portugal, England, and then by the time June 1348 comes around, it's hitting Germany, it's hitting Scandinavia, and those countries are wrecked from like 1348 to 1350. And then in Norway by 1349, and then it hits Russia in 1351. And what was really funny is I read a website that was like, Hitler couldn't break into Russia.
Right.
Like, all these other people couldn't break into Russia, but the plague sure got that shit.
The plague got to Russia. That's the thing that's famous about invading Russia is, like, you will die when the winter hits. Like, your army will die. And those rats are just like, this is a nice place. Let's stay.
So the only way that you could have been safe was if you weren't part of any trade with your neighbors. So you would
have had to be the asshole neighbor.
Yeah, it was a good time to be a self-sustaining hermit.
Yeah, keep your fucking casserole, Barbara. I'm good.
Oh my God. So isolated areas of Belgium and the Netherlands, as well as scattered alpine villages, were places where the plague was far less common. So if you were far away from everyone else, you were like, all right, I'm good.
What's happening to everyone over there? Let's stay here.
Oh man, why are they coughing so much? All right, so all it takes to contract the plague is getting a little bit of this bacterium in you called Yersinia pestis.
Does that have to do with urine?
No.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, no. It takes three main forms of plague. There's the pneumonic plague, the septicemic plague, and the bubonic plague. And modern research on existing mass graves of Black Death have shown definitively that it is this Y. pestis bacteria that caused the Black Death. And
can you imagine being the person that has to dig up Black Plague graves?
They're going to be
dude.
There's mass graves all over the world.
Yeah, but you just don't know which ones you're digging up. If it's like, hey, this isn't the second worst disease of all time. This is the worst disease of all time. Have John the intern do it. Fuck that, dude.
It's not exactly sure which strain is the real, like, exact culprit of this whole mass extinction type thing, this whole Black Death. But it is thought that it was the bubonic variety. But it could be anything, Comes in 3 strains, 3 flavors for your pleasure.
I was going to say, Jesus. If it was 2018, it would be 31 flavors for shiz.
Symptoms of bubonic plague include swollen lymph nodes, freckle-like spots and rashes.
Uh-oh.
What?
I was just thinking, like, they must have been just setting gingers on fire back in the day.
You'd get a fever of around 100 to 106 degrees.
Wow.
Headaches, painful aching joints, nausea, and then you'd start vomiting. Yum.
Gross.
So that had a mortality rate of 80%.
Holy shit.
And then the pneumonic plague has symptoms of fever, coughing, and then spitting up blood, which had a mortality rate of 90 to 95%. And then septicemic plague, which is the absolute least common, but the most horrible of the 3 strains, has a mortality rate of 100%.
Wow. So if you get it, you're dead.
Yeah.
Wow. Spanish flu only had a mortality rate of 20%.
What?
Yeah, it infected so many fucking people that it infected 500 million. It killed maybe 100 million, which would be 20%.
That's crazy.
Yeah. Imagine if it would have been the infection rate. And that's the other thing about diseases that have such high mortality rates is they can't spread as quickly. Because if you're anyone who's played Plague Inc. knows, don't kill them off too fast. You have to infect the world first.
Well, these just killed people so ridiculously fast. So you would start having fevers and purple skin patches. And then for pneumonic and septicemic strains, sometimes the disease was spread so fast that your lymph nodes would never even show evidence of infection.
So they check your lymph nodes, like one of the most common things, like, oh yeah, you look fine. And then you'd be fucking dead.
You'd be dead. And you know what's really gross is that how you'd get it is a flea would bite you. And then they're eating, right? And then they would develop a blockage. And
oh God.
It would literally freak out because it's starting to starve because there's a blockage while it's trying to eat. And so in order to clear this blockage, it would literally regurgitate into the feeding site.
So a flea is like, what the hell, boy? Back into you.
So it would vomit all that bacteria into your wound.
So gross.
It is so gross.
And fleas are so small.
And the scary fact is that the blood of plague-infected rats contains 500 to 1,000 times more bacteria per unit of measurement than the blood of infected humans.
Wow.
Yeah.
So if you stomped a rat, it's basically like you just set off fucking...
Well, it's like those fleas are coming off rats. They got all the blood from the rats in them, and then they're like, let me bite you.
Let me barf this into you.
And then barf it into you.
And then on that same token, like, if you see if a rat dies and its blood is literally fucking anywhere, it's like a chemical warfare bomb being set off.
Yep.
And they're everywhere.
So victims usually died 2 to 7 days after infection.
Wow.
So fast, like that. Like Thanos. Not as fast, but you know.
His is pretty efficient, I will say.
So for some reason, women and children saw higher incidence of mortality compared to that of adult men.
Wow.
Yeah, it's
the
so
opposite
weird.
of Spanish flu.
I guess. During the Middle Ages, medical knowledge just wasn't what it is today. So
the toe foot knee leg thing.
Exactly. So it's like they saw a case it's a toe foot turn into knee leg in no time.
You need an ear nail.
Let me get a blue jay to pick all that blood out. Okay, so
Seth MacFarlane owes us a royalty check for how much we quote his fucking movie, I swear.
Good. Okay, so that is the type of medicine that we're looking at here. Like, they don't have real, like, medicine that we have today. And, seriously, the King of France blamed the conjunction of 3 planets in 1345, causing a quote-unquote great pestilence in the air.
In the air?
Yeah. So
he could feel it coming in the air that night.
Tonight, yeah.
Yep.
So people just thought it was bad air. This was called the quote-unquote miasma theory. And for me, miasma will always just remind me of Inuyasha because it's just a weird demon thing.
I'm pretty sure it's also a spell in Warcraft, or
is
maybe
it really?
It's a spell in some RPG or RTS that I have played where you create basically a plague cloud. And I'm pretty sure whichever game it was called Miasma, the next iteration of that game, it was called Plague Cloud.
Oh my god.
Because everyone was like, what the fuck does that mean?
That's hilarious. Healers at the time just had no explanation. People thought it was a punishment from God for their sins.
Yeah, you run out of scientific explanations. So you're like, God hates us. And let's be real, dude. If your mortality rate is that high and you're just sitting there like, I've exhausted all of my resources as a scientist, pretty sure God just hates us.
Oh my gosh. I think one of the really interesting repercussions of such a huge, deadly pandemic is the economic and social structure change that happens because so many people get murdered off. You can imagine trade was severely changed because people were like, whoa, I can't, like, disease is just rampant. There's no way. I don't want to go there. We're fine.
It literally slows down like global economy and global development because everyone becomes isolationists.
Yeah. The death of so many people just leaves power vacuums, but it also allows for social status changes. Luckily for some, like, serfdoms were absolutely abolished.
Yeah, it's like it's literally one of the few times that this like idea that someone's born, which means that they deserve to rule you, no longer affects you. Because like
dead.
Their whole fucking family
they just die like everyone else.
And then you're like, let's pick someone else randomly, maybe because they said they have a claim to a throne, and we'll put them in charge until they all die too.
Yeah, so that was really cool. And then that
was awesome.
No, the fact that serfdoms got...
it is very cool that, the oppression of people was, like, limited and then kind of removed because the people doing it, or people, like, perpetrating that were kind of just gone. They got snapped out of existence.
There were also modernizations of technology because of it, because they were like, well, we got to figure out what the fuck's going on.
Isn't this where the phrase like necessity is the mother of invention came from?
I have no idea.
Because people decided they needed to have things, then all of a sudden it spurred like the great wave of inventions that would eventually continue to happen once the disease went away.
That's kind of cool.
I'm pretty sure I've read somewhere recently when I was doing some research that like the horrible things that led to all the waves of creations like directly led into the Renaissance. So it's like it kind of spurred that movement, which was still a very horrific time to be a woman. That's exactly what it was. I was researching on witches.
Oh, okay.
And I was like, oh, it had to be good in the Renaissance. Everything was good then. No, it got worse.
Okay. So unfortunately, during all this plague crap, people just became shitty people. But it also gave the opportunity for those that were better to go out there, like nurses and stuff that were like, I'm still going to help people. Like,
by better, you mean good people.
Right. So the crappy people just stopped caring about others. Parents literally stopped caring about their kids, acting like they weren't their kids because they didn't want to fucking get sick. Religious fanaticism made a huge resurgence after the Black Death. Certain groups became targets of persecution. Europeans just needed someone to blame for what happened. So these poor lepers were like some of the worst people that got singled out and wrongly exterminated.
And
throughout
leprosy
all of
had
Europe.
nothing to do with it.
No, and not at all. Not even a little bit. Then hygiene. Hygiene wasn't even a big thing at this time. Like, through cities like London, conditions were just ripe for the spread of disease.
Didn't they pour their buckets of shit down on
Sewage
the road?
literally flowed in the streets.
It's so gross.
Sewage literally flowed in the streets. Houses were absolutely overcrowded. Bathing fell out of fashion in Northern Europe way before the Renaissance. And
so gross, dude.
They replaced bathing by sweat bathing and perfume.
What the fuck is
I don't know what
bathing?
sweat bathing is,
Like
but it
saunas?
sounds gross.
Like going into a sauna and sweating a fuck ton
It
and being
must
like,
be.
I'm good now.
Yeah, it must be. And they just wore perfume to cover up their stank. And then
Their stanky ass.
it just sounds gross. And it was thought that the water would carry disease into their skin. That's why they didn't bathe. And so,
I mean, if
little
they live
did they
in-
know, fleas would be their downfall
I was
instead of
about
water.
to say, like,
So,
if you live in Flint, Michigan, you pretty much don't want to touch that water. So
Oh,
I can't
yeah,
imagine what it would be like back then.
so since 2002, the World Health Organization, or WHO, WHO,
I've never heard anyone refer to them as WHO,
it's WHO.
but everyone says WHO.
I know, but it's like, it spells who, has reported 7 plague outbreaks. Some in more remote areas may go unreported, though, because they're so remote. And, if you're a doctor for them, you could call yourself a doctor for who.
I hate you.
A doctor who.
I knew where you were going with it. As soon as you started saying who, this is why I tried to fight
Nailed it. Okay, so between 1998 and 2009, there were nearly 24,000 reported cases, resulting in 2,000 deaths. So that's not that bad.
Yeah, I was gonna say, mortality
2,000
rate
deaths,
used to be
not
much
that
higher.
bad. But 90% of the cases did occur in Africa. In 1984, an outbreak occurred and killed 30 people. So it's not too bad. I mean,
Yeah,
30
we're
people.
definitely way better than, 1/3 of a continent.
In 2015, a boy named Taylor Gaze, a 16-year-old in northern Colorado, actually contracted. Shit.
I was like, he is a contractor? Wow, this is a really industrial young man.
Contracted septicemic plague. I think
The
from
worst kind.
from the corpse of a dog.
How the fuck did
Yeah.
the dog get it?
It's just fleas. You know
But
what I
where
mean?
the fuck is it coming back from is my point.
But only 3 people in Colorado have Only 3 people in Stop!
Sorry, it's just funny.
But only 3 people in Colorado have contracted the bacteria in the past 30 years. So, I mean,
That's good.
That's
That's a
rare.
good number. I would prefer for the number to be 0, especially for the people of Colorado.
In 2007, a wildlife biologist by the name of Eric York died of pneumonic plague in Grand Canyon National Park after being exposed to the bacteria while doing a necropsy on a mountain lion carcass.
What is necropsy?
Probably like an autopsy.
Okay.
Yeah.
I heard the SY and I was like, that sounds sciencey and not sexy. So that's
God.
probably a good thing.
Yeah,
Weird
so-
fucking thing. I knew a kid named Eric York growing up. I really hope that was not him.
What?
Yeah, he lived right next to me. We hung out all the time until he moved
Did he
away.
become a wildlife
I
biologist?
sure fucking hope not.
Okay, so he died of pneumonic plague. It just sucks because it's like these dead animals. They want to research these dead animals or whatever, and then they're like, "Oh, BTW died of plague." Like, how shitty is that?
I mean, if you're, I don't know.
And
if
that's
you're
in
ever,
2007 when we have the medicine.
Yeah.
You know?
And I can't imagine he was just going in there like with his bare hands. Like,
Right,
he
no.
probably had stuff for protection. It's just not nearly enough for dealing with
the
something
needle
like the plague.
pinches or punctures the glove, and then he gets diseased and
Just
dies.
like Outbreak.
Anyway, modern outbreaks are nowhere near as widely contracted or deadly. Why? Stop laughing.
I didn't say
at me.
anything.
It just reminds me of medical shows I've seen where people come in with a mysterious disease or an extinct strain that appears because of the melting of polar ice caps or shit like that.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's just crazy. All that's really clear from the speculation and hypothesis of origin is that war and famine had a big thing to do with the severity of the Black Death. Like, just all these people.
It always directly contributes. It literally always directly contributes to the spread of disease.
Talk about horsemen of the apocalypse, am I right?
Wow. Well done. Like, that's really weird, come to think of it.
Yeah. War, famine, and pestilence.
There's 4.
I know. What's the other one?
If famine and pestilence aren't the same, then it's war, famine, pestilence, death.
The 4 horsemen of the apocalypse are war, famine, pestilence, and death.
Okay, famine and pestilence aren't the same thing. Pestilence is disease.
Yeah.
Famine is starvation.
So it's that this whole plague thing was all 4 of those. Literally, the horsemen of the apocalypse came in and were like, fuck y'all.
It's like, you guys all want to fight each other? You guys want to be the absolute worst of humanity? Fuck y'all. All y'all. I don't want to sing anymore because I don't want a copyright strike.
Oh, no. Oh, yeah, I bet they would, too.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, man. Okay. So, okay, anyway. Europe and the Mediterranean were haunted by recurrences of the plague throughout the 14th and 17th century. So this shit kept coming back. And in 1518, there were finally like regulations put up in London on how to deal with the plague. Infected houses had to hang bales of hay on a pole outside their house for 40 days. Then the people who lived inside had to carry a white stick around. Other rules included painting a cross on the doors of the infected houses, burying people at night. Luckily, following the introduction of antibiotics and modern medicine, the mortality rate is much, much lower.
I know that this is a very long episode, and I know that you probably don't want to hear another fucking tangent, people, but it just reminds me of that episode of Sliders, which we all remember and love, with Jerry O'Connell and the guy who played Gimli, that was on Fox, where it was basically just them. It was fucking Quantum Leap with 4 people instead of 1, and they just went to world to world to world, and each one was in a parallel universe where something was different. And it just reminds me so much of this because they wind up sliding into a world that's just covered in disease and death, and they finally figure out what's wrong, and what's wrong in that world is no one ever invented penicillin. And
What?
yeah, and then they tell them, like, you can make penicillin with trash and oranges. Because, like, you use mold and, like, citrus in some ways or shapes or forms. I can't remember how you fucking do it. But it's just so weird to think, like, this shit got under control when antibiotics showed up. And just imagine a world where they didn't. And, like, that's what someone did in that episode of that TV show from 20 years ago that I'm, for some reason, referencing at an hour and 45 minutes into this podcast.
It's just, like, insane how scientists just figure all this stuff out.
Why stand in the way of science when they're trying to tell you, like, hey, you know this huge problem we're having? This is how we should fix it. And so long, so many people.
You gotta stop these nuts.
It's so fucking funny, dude. But it's so true. Like, it's just something that is repeated throughout human history. Like, there's a problem, we blame something that's not the cause. Whether it's gods or just something in general we want to blame to make a victim. And then we just keep doing that. And when someone's like, whoa, hey, this is the actual problem, we can fix it. Shut the fuck up, nerd. And then you just keep doing that for centuries until someone's finally like, oh, okay, no, we're not doing that anymore. We're going to do what they say. Oh, look, everyone's not dying from puking to death or shitting to death anymore. What a good thing, right?
Shit.
And then the next thing shows up and everyone's like, shut the fuck up, nerd. It just is
so
baffling
crazy
to me that we keep doing this.
So the prevention of spreading of disease is also down to a science, obviously. Quarantine is much better handled. Like, everything is amazing now because modern medicine. Fuck yeah. Interesting fact. I think we've all already covered Poveglia, that one island that you covered in Italy.
Yeah. The island of Ash, right?
Yeah. So that place is the dumping ground for over 160,000 plague sufferers.
That was the first episode where I talked about the stadiums and filling them with people.
Yeah.
And then how small of an island that is.
Yeah.
And then just imagine that many people there.
Yeah. And rumor has it that the property's topsoil consists of 50% human ash. You covered that. And visitors to the island feel like they're being watched, and construction crews claim to be scared away by the spirits. Like that.
Shout out to Jill. She was the one who told us to do that episode. Yeah. And as soon as I researched that topic, and I was like, I've never heard of this, I was like, I have to cover this immediately because it was mind-blowing.
Yeah. And that doctor that came onto that island. Oh, ha. So the doctor that was on that island, like, is said to have gone crazy by the ghosts of plague victims. So I think that's absolutely insane.
I hate you. In the membrane? Anyway, insane in the brain.
So another ghostly tale is that in the British city of York, the tale goes something like this. A family moved into a house and started hearing crying in the hallways, and they couldn't locate the source, but the crying made them feel sadness and regret. Like, it just made them feel sad. They later learned that a little girl died in their house. Her parents had died of the plague, and although she was healthy, the villagers decided to lock her inside the home with the corpses of her parents.
That's so fucked up.
And it's thought that she slowly starved to death. So she could have equipped, the cannibal perk. And then,
oh, that's so gross. This is not Fallout 76, bro.
I'm just so addicted to that game right now.
The cannibal perk is a cool thing for gameplay mechanics. Why don't you explain it to the people, Robin?
In Fallout 76, the new gameplay mechanic is that instead of you just leveling up and choosing where to put your specialty point or your perk
experience point or whatever,
you get cards to
equip.
And one of the cards is cannibal. And what you can do with this cannibal card in Fallout 76 is you can eat the corpses of, like, anything, really. Any type of creature.
Human meat.
Yeah, you can eat them.
That's fucked up.
Yeah, you can eat them all. It's absolutely hilarious to watch. When my character, like, bends down, there's just blood spraying everywhere.
That's so gross.
I don't know. I love Fallout 76. Anyway, so Scandinavian ghost stories include one of a figure named Pesta, which is the
pestilence.
It's a personification of the Black Death. And this hideous, shriveled figure appears at houses touched by the disease. If she carries a rake, some members of the family might survive. If she's carrying a broom, everyone's about to die.
That is a really weird distinction to make between two items that seem to have nothing to do with plague.
I don't know. It's just like...
So broom is bad, rake is righteous. I'm just trying to figure out a way to remember it.
Yeah, it's just weird. But those are some cool stories to go along with it. So, yeah.
That's really good. That's some scary fucking shit, dude.
Yeah, disease freaks me out.
See, this is the thing. I really wanted to cover disease. So when you brought it up and I had already been thinking about it, I'm like, yes, we're fucking doing this. Because disease freaks me out. And I think that's why you have germaphobes, because people are so terrified of how germs spread and how quickly that can happen. So I know we have people that have anxiety. I brought it up on the last episode. So before you get triggered, I just want you to remember about the advancements that we've had in technology and in medical science, and the fact that stuff like this still does pop up, but we are able to be like, yo, we're recognizing this now and we're dealing with it, because that is a big step in, making sure everyone doesn't die. And we are seeing the results of that because we haven't had a giant drop in population like we have had in the past. And it's like, I am so fascinated by mass disappearances, which I think are amazing. That's why I covered Lake Anjikuni back in the day. That was one of the main things. A video game. It does. That's one of the main things I wanted to do the show for, is because I was so fascinated with that. And I also am very fascinated by mass extinction events. And just going through this, I'm like, oh man, I want to tell stories about stuff that like is 100% documented, 100% historical, that I maybe rolled my eyes at when I was learning about it the first time, because it's really fucking terrifying. And it's just really fun to do. Like doing this, I'll be totally honest with you. The one thing that popped in my head is like, the one thing I can think of that was a larger mass extinction event in human history.
The dinosaurs?
In human history.
Oh, that's right.
Is Yellowstone Natural Park.
What?
Yeah, because Yellowstone Natural Park is a supervolcano. There's no mountain because it's such a huge cauldron or caldera of lava that when it explodes...
I lava you.
I lava you too. When it explodes, it basically wipes out the world. And it's so fucking crazy. Like that whole story, like I can't wait to do that as a topic, because that mass extinction event has happened in the past, and all the research that got put into it, I've watched so many documentaries on it, and it's just so bizarre when you look at stuff. Is that your nerd boner showing? That is my nerd boner showing. I'm going to do Yellowstone National Park mass extinction event, And I'm going to cover that one. I think I might have to do it next because I have such a nerd boner for it now and just go so balls deep into all the scientific facts and scientific evidence and scientific theories about like what happens when this thing explodes. That will hopefully terrify you and make you understand why I sort of regret moving to this coast.
Okay.
Because I'm just way too fucking close to it at this point. But yeah, that's some crazy shit too. Because you think about like, wow, a third of a continent was wiped out. And then like thinking about like other events like that, like if you guys can think of some where it's like, yeah, this almost exterminated the world, like, yeah, definitely hit us up because I want to research more of those. And Yellowstone's what I'm going to do, but I want to hear about more that I maybe have never heard of. Because like when you get into it, if you've never heard of something like that before, you're like, holy shit, how did I not know that this was a thing that I should be terrified of? So right on. That was a really good episode. It was very, very long. I'm going to hate myself editing tonight. I'm going to love myself when we're on that plane and I'm asleep because I'll have all this shit in my rear view and we'll be on vacation. But man, this was a really good time. I really enjoyed doing this episode. I hope you guys enjoyed listening to it. I know it was longer. You keep saying, no, we like them when they're long. Well, there you go. Back-to-back weeks. Super long episodes.
Cool.
So is there anything else you can think of that you want to bring up for a disease?
No, just sneeze in your hand and not in front of people's faces, and wash your hands, and don't be gross.
Yeah, don't be gross. That's a really good rule for life. Don't be gross. Don't be a dick. So
you're a dick all the time.
Yeah, but I'm not like too much of a dick. I'm just the right amount of dick, which I think you know what I'm talking about.
Oh shit, shut up.
Well, we're going to go ahead and just wrap this thing up. So just one more reminder, folks. January Patreon push. Head on over to patreon.com/scarishpodcast, spelled patreon.com/scarishpodcast. I'm not spelling that. You got that shit. And sign up. It's if you have an impulse buy at any point during a month, I'm not even saying you don't have to do it. Just make it $1 less. And let us be a $1 recurring charge on your bank accounts, pretty please, so we can get to 50 patrons for the month of January so we can head up to
the Winchester Mansion.
So we can meet up with you folks, also explore someplace spooky, which will be really fun. And if we get it for the month of January, I have to wear a cheerleading outfit as well. So we'll see what happens with that, but we're really excited. Robin, where can people go to donate to us if they don't want to go through Patreon?
So you can go to ko-fi.com/scarishpodcast. And those are all one-time donations that'll go to helping us upgrade our studio setup.
Indeed. And thank you so much to anyone who's already donated. We appreciate that. If you folks want to reach out to us with your homegrown horrors, there's multiple ways. Email storytime@scarish.com. Go to the website, scarish.com. Click on Contact Us, fill out that form, send it our way. You can also go to facebook.com/scarishpodcast and message us. Please go there and click like on the page if you haven't already, even if you don't have a story. From there, you can join the Scarish Spooky Friends group, which is a group on Facebook that you can post your story to for instant feedback from the community. Also, stay and hang out for the memes. You can also do that on Discord. We have a lot of people in Discord now. It's basically a giant chat room app where you have a bunch of different channels, which is really, really fun.
It's cool making friends with people in there.
It is. So go to go to scarish.com and scroll down, find the Discord logo. There's all of our social media logos in the same section. Click on the Discord one and you're there. You can also go to Twitter @ScarishPod, Instagram @ScarishPodcast. And if you want to watch us record the Storytime episodes live, twitch.tv/ScarishPodcast and youtube.com/Scarish. Last thing I'm going to say, you can go to youtube.com/Scarish and watch every single episode we have ever done.
Yeah.
And you will be able to find
We're looking at the camera.
We keep looking at the camera. And if you want to watch the live episodes, they are all up there as well. It's a fun time. You can see some of the stuff that never makes the episodes.
Yeah.
Some of the silly stuff, some of the fun stuff,
There's
some
a
of
lot
the
of
inside jokes that Robin references all the time without explanation.
So please go watch the live episodes that we post on YouTube because a lot of our inside jokes are on there. All our
We're not purposely making inside jokes.
No,
I
but
always
it's
try and get Robin to explain them.
Our interaction with everyone in the chat that shows up for the live shows is always so incredibly fun, and you guys make it fun to do this, and I think you guys should check it out.
Any of you folks that have ever listened to an episode that have spoken out loud in your car or your office or thought something or wished you could communicate to someone about something you're hearing on the episode, that is what the live shows are. You just type in a little chat window regardless of where you're watching us, whether it's Twitch or YouTube. We get both of those stream chats, and we can see what you guys have to say on the topics we're talking about, and then you can talk to us about other things that you've heard. You can chime in with little things like, hey, this actually happened to me. Not full-blown long stories, or else they don't make the episode, and maybe you want to save those for later. But sometimes people are like, hey, this has happened to me that's very similar, and it's a very short story. It's this amazing interaction that we get to have with you guys, and it's always new. It's always fresh. It makes recording the Storytime episodes so much fun. And thank you to everyone who consistently comes out. We appreciate you folks so much. And it is really the most fun that we have all week.
Cool.
So I just want to say thank you one more time to everyone who listens, everyone who contributes, everyone who just listens to us. When I say contributes, if you're listening to this show right now, you're contributing. And we love you for it. So thank you so much.
Tell your friends about it. Share us.
Pretty please. Tell your friends. So that's everything that we have. And I'm going to take the sign out because I think you had it for the last couple weeks.
Yeah.
So keep on creeping on people. And we will talk to you later this week.